Adam said we should make a motion for it. Yeah. So I was thinking we're gonna have to do that right at the top of that. Do you know Justin? If you all can stick to that. And this should be. Stick to the facts, right?
Understood. I understand the logic.
Yeah, okay. And feel free to, I appreciate your brain.
So it's gonna be more. So they'll be working.
Oh, I've been getting calls.
Come work for them.
It wasn't like on the, like if you go to the planning
Favorite is when they
zone
ask, how do you
section
stop?
of the township itself, it's not. I was surprised it wasn't directly on.
Right. I would, if you were, yeah, she's thinking about
I mean, I'd
bailing.
love to recuse myself because I work for the town.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with I don't have paperwork from that last.
Because it happens so much that it's like, it's just, I.
I don't know. Bylaws, section say, at 10 o'clock, that's basically our limit. Fire marshal.
Whatever. I see.
Well, we used to, we always had, we never used it, and then we started using it because our meetings were. See, that's ridiculous. You just don't have that
You're just so
stamina,
drained. You're
you
just
know, to
drained.
make good decisions.
But you can limit.
Is this 7 o'clock?
Yes, the other way, yeah.
We'll go.
Oh, he did,
I missed it. Oh my God, I had her baby that day.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah.
pay for it.
Grant.
Well,
4
that's a good
o'clock that
excuse.
day. Yeah. 4 o'clock that day.
They really need it.
And I'm like,
I mean, he would let things go.
totally would.
I would
do that during the Yeah.
I would have too.
Oh, my wife is like, oh, you just go to the meeting. You can see the baby tomorrow. I'm like, no, that's just not right.
No.
Something about being there than that. Yeah.
10 of them.
It was,
Everything's good. Thanks for asking.
Right.
Baby's name is Emilia with the E. Emphasis on E. Yeah, so her husband is Italian. It's gonna be yeah, so she's gonna be known as Emma.
When I was on
Oh, yeah, that's funny, yeah, for Geely.
Ready, Dan? Everyone ready? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, December 21st, 2023. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:04 PM. Roll call, please, Ms. Oparka.
Member Baccia.
Here.
Member Devlin. Present. Member Duncan.
Here.
Member Mulder.
Present.
Member Tominello.
Here.
Member Oparka. Here. Chair Murray.
Present. Thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please?
I will make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion by Ms. Oparka, supported by Mr. Mulder to approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have two sets of minutes this evening. Our November 16th, our last meeting, and then our September 21st, the one prior to that where we had a confirmation on a change. May I have a motion to approve the November 16th minute meetings, please?
So moved.
Meeting minutes. Thank you. Mr. Mulder, support. Ms. Devlin? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. How about our September 21st minutes? I believe we had a clarification on one of the motions. Mr. Duncan
I'll support.
and Ms. Oparka. Any discussion on the, and that's to approve?
Yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Our first hearing and review this evening, Ms. Oparka.
Case number 25-23 RZ Nick Del Greco, Mondo Properties, 34535 Jefferson.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Hi, please come on up. How are you? Good, thank you. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you.
You want to go ahead and fill us in on, as we remember last time, we didn't have, we had just 4 members.
Yeah.
And you chose to table to come back for all 7 of us present.
Yeah, and I do apologize. Like I explained the last time, this is my first go-around, so I'm kind of unfamiliar
No,
with the
that
process.
was absolutely, you're right. No apology necessary.
Okay, well, basically, I wanted to reiterate my request. We own the parcel there that's shown. Currently, it's shown GC. I don't believe makes a lot of sense for the area. I'm requesting to rezone it to RM2 because the square footage requirements would allow me to build 4 or 5 units on the property. After hearing some of the concerns from a couple of the residents at the last meeting of traffic and density, what I proposed, if possible, is to build, if it was approved to RM2, 2 duplex building for a total of 4 units.
Can I ask you to pull your mic? Yeah.
Sure, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
RM1, which is to the south, would only allow 3 units on the property. And what I had done is I provided a rendering. If you drew a line from the back property straight across to the south, that's RM1, and it would have 4 units on that. I don't know if that was able to be illustrated. So that's my intention. The property's been vacant for quite some time, and if approved, then I'd like to build 2 duplex units if possible.
Did you want to address the information in your cover letter regarding conditional rezoning if granted the request, you're willing to construct 4 units, but not, or less, but not 5.
Correct. If granted, and hopefully, RM2 would allow 5, but in hope to alleviate some of the concerns, I would concede to construct only 4. Currently, if I was to get rezoned to RM1, it would only allow 3, and to be quite honest, financially, it wouldn't make a lot of sense for me to do so. But to alleviate some of the concerns and traffic and density that I heard at our previous meeting, if the condition could be placed where it would allow me to build 4, I would be pleased with that, if it pleases you guys.
Thank you. Anything else to share?
No, just thank you, Adam, for the help in answering all my questions when I contacted you. And
Thank you.
like I said,
Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Comments?
Do we need to clarify that it is the applicant's request for the condition?
Yep.
Not that it's a
Absolutely.
concession?
Yep, we were going to go there. We can address that right now, though, since you brought it up. So,
Madam Chair, because this is set for a public hearing for a rezoning, but the petitioner has requested placing a condition on the rezoning, which he has offered to you, and so therefore it makes it a conditional rezoning. You're agreeing to only construct the 4 units when you're allowed, if you were to get it rezoned, to construct 5.
Correct.
That being said, if this matter were be approved, if this board made a recommendation to the township board to approve your rezoning request, you need to, and you can get with our office,
Sure.
We would prepare a conditional rezoning agreement which memorializes that condition, that you're only going to build 4,
okay,
just so you're aware of that.
sure,
Okay?
yes,
All right.
thank you.
perfect, thank you. So you are, at this point, can you say that you are officially requesting?
I am officially requesting a
Conditional
conditional rezoning to RM2 to allow 4 units as opposed to the 5.
So a maximum of 4 units?
The maximum of 4, 2 buildings, 2 duplexes.
Okay. Okay, let me open that back up to the table. Any other comments or questions for the applicant? Any other questions from
No.
you to us?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. Motion, please, or discussion?
So, sure, I'd like to just talk about this for a little bit. So, one of the things, we're starting our master plan, new master plan sessions. One of the things I've heard clearly from residents is, condos, we have so many condos, and I believe, I don't know if we're at 48 or 52%, Mr. Or Adam, I don't know if you have that number, but I know that we're above the average in Macomb County where we have condos or multifamily units.
Adam pulled those numbers on our last workshop for the
Yeah,
master plan, and we were not above.
Yeah, so the question was raised recently. I did look at SEMCOG's website. They have community profiles. They have housing statistics. Harrison Township for condominium, I think it was 8.5% condominium units and 7.5% multifamily units. That's in comparison. We did compare it to some adjoining communities. Mount Clemens had a higher percentage of multifamily units. Clinton Township had a higher percentage of multifamily units.
Yeah.
Harrison has a higher percentage of condo units, I think, than those 2 communities.
Right.
Potentially because of the waterfront and all that.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was referring to, right?
So not, certainly not 42%.
Okay. It's
Based
a
on,
higher.
yeah, based on
restaurant.
SEMCOG information, it would be more in the 15% range.
So I guess I do have one question for the applicant before I continue. So if you, are all the accesses going to be on Jefferson, or are you going to have one on the side streets?
Well, currently, I would have to do a site plan that would conform to you guys' ordinance, but in thinking, I would have 1 building, 2 units front off of Jefferson, and the other building front off of the side street.
So I guess that sort of leads me to where I was going, and my thought is, I'm not opposed to having one single-family home, because I think it's in cooperation with the other surrounding units, but if there's a home that's on the side street, I guess I'd be looking for that to stay cohesive with the street and be a single-family home. which would give you 5 units. So basically, you have a 2-family home on Jefferson right now, 2-family home off Jefferson to the north, and then 1-family home off of the side street, which is
Trombley.
Trombley. That's my thoughts, I mean, that way, it's sort of a compromise on, not putting 2 condos again, because I think we have too many condos in the township. That's just my personal opinion.
So if you were to do the two, if you were to do the 2 duplexes, because I
Yes.
think that's what the intent was, were they both to have driveways off to Trombley, or would one have driveways off to Trombley and one have driveway off to Jefferson?
Well, currently, I don't have a site plan laid out, but
But, I mean, your thought.
my thought process was to have the 2 driveways off of Trombley and 2 off of Jefferson, kind of like what's there to the adjacent to the immediate south. And those are duplexes that you see the dotted line running into, and the property that's right to the south is a duplex as well. I'm open to putting them off of Jefferson, but having that high-rise across the street being very high density, and I just thought it would be safer possibly to have people pulling in and out off of a side street, 2 of the units versus off of Jefferson, with all the
Agreed.
traffic
Yeah,
from
agreed.
across the street.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Adam, do we still have the graphic that shows the surrounding zoning? Because there is quite a bit of high-density zoning in the area. And one thing about condos, the number of condos, is that most single-family housing is going in as condos now. So having a condo is different than like a single-family unit or a 2-family unit. People don't really, or developers don't really use the subdivision regulations anymore. They pretty much do all single-family development as a condo. So that can skew the numbers.
Yeah, here's the zoning pattern. So across the street, the entirety of the east side of Jefferson is the multifamily high density. And then every property fronting the west side of Jefferson is either multifamily, RM1, or commercial, including this particular site in the corner across the street, but multifamily to the north, multifamily to the south as well. Yeah, this parcel is actually not a home, it's an assisted living facility immediately to the west. And then the property to the south I think that must be 7 units total on this property. On one parcel, correct. And then we've got kind of the underutilized commercial site immediately across Trombley from this site.
Which hopefully this, development of this nature might spur the revitalization of that parcel.
That would be nice.
And, a residential use on that parcel would be much more desirable than the vacant sort of commercial that's there now, with a lot of outdoor
This particular property
storage.
we know has been for sale and undeveloped for many years under the current commercial zoning. This parcel is now, I think, undeveloped. We've had come through the township a number of different requests and inquiries, and nothing has ever really worked out for commercial on this site either.
I'll offer that, if you just look at the surrounding properties, logic would suggest that RM1 would be like the one that makes most reasonable sense, just looking at what's around. Understanding that RM1 would allow 3 units to be on the property versus the applicant's offer to build 4. So at this point, at least in my mind, I'm wrestling, what's the difference between 3 and 4 at this stage? But I guess maybe somewhat to Larry's point, I mean, just straight up, RM1 is the one that feels to be the one to make the most sense, but since the applicant's asking for a conditional rezoning and capping it at 4, guess in my mind, it's just kind of evaluating 4 is more than 3, so it's like we all know that, but I guess that's where my head's at. I'm kind of tossing either way at this stage.
I mean, I guess for me, knowing that that other home is an assisted living facility, I don't necessarily consider that a traditional single-family home.
Agreed.
So then the surrounding everything other than the salvage yard or vehicle storage, whatever it's labeled on there, is multi.
Yeah, I gravitate toward the RM2 with the conditional rezoning agreement on the limit to 4. I see that as fitting on that parcel nicely, without being excessive. 3 would be nice, but I think 4 is reasonable, in my opinion. Any other discussion? Or a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of rezoning the property from GC to RM2, subject to the applicant's offered condition of a maximum of 4 units, based on the rezoning review standards put forth in the letter from the planner dated October 26th, and also in conformance with the findings in that letter.
And can we also add there that, that the applicant has agreed to meet with council for the signing of the conditional rezoning agreement before the Board of Trustees meeting?
Yeah, but he has to do that.
So we have a motion to approve, to recommend to the Board of Trustees a conditional rezoning to RM2 as stated. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Duncan, thank you. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you, Mr. Dominello. You're approved.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, you recommended.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you are recommended to the Board of Trustees, so please be sure and connect with council to take care of the signing of that rezoning agreement, that conditional rezoning agreement.
Okay, thank you guys very much. Hope
Thank
you
you.
all have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you, same to you.
You too. It's like a little birdie in my ear.
If you could just indulge me for 30 seconds, please. Mr. Sunstock, do you know how to stop the beep on the
Alarm?
on the alarm? It's the beep every 30 seconds. It happens it's been a long time for us as well. Okay, thank you. I just thought I'd ask. Okay. I'm sorry? What's it say? It doesn't say anything. We went through the menus and there wasn't an option to shut it down.
Can we Google it?
You want to take a look at it? Okay, our second item, please, Ms. Oparko.
Case 30-23-PUD, Victoria Park Holdings, LLC.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Please come up. Hi, how are you?
Wonderful.
Great. Let us know who you are, please.
My name is Steve Pangori. I'm with Anderson, Eckstein, and Westrick. Also, Randy Dupree, the developers.
Okay. Okay, want to go
Chair?
ahead? I'm sorry, yes,
give a
yes, that
summary?
would be wonderful.
I wanted to kind of go through the process for the benefit of you, the planning commission, and the applicant, and those in the audience as well. So this is a request for a planned unit development for for a single-family residential detached site condominium project. A planned unit development is a project that would allow for some flexibility in the application of the ordinance standards, such as setbacks and lot sizes, in exchange for public benefit, which may include a variety of things such as preservation of open space, as one example. A planned unit development requires a first initial step, and that's what this evening is. The ordinance calls it a conceptual planned unit development review. This is, a public hearing has not been scheduled for this request for this evening. That's not required by the ordinance. This is simply a discussion phase where the applicant is able to present their idea or their concept for the development of this property. You are not required to, actually, you're not to make any decision this evening. You're simply here to offer any comments, engage in a discussion, ask questions. So no decisions would be made. It's just kind of a conversation. And the applicant should be listening to maybe what comments you might have. Ultimately, if they wanted to continue to move forward with the planned unit development, they would need to come back to you with a more formal, finalized, with a lot more detail, site plan, condominium documents, master deed bylaws, and other information. And at that point is when a public hearing would be scheduled. And then you would make, after the public hearing, you would make a recommendation, and ultimately it would go to the township board as well. So that's the process here this evening. So I just wanted to
Thank
kind of
you.
share that. The applicant can, of course, share what their project is.
Thank you. So a meeting of the minds, is it a viable project?
Exactly. Can it generally conform to the ordinance? What are some comments that you would have for them to take
Thank
into
you.
consideration as they prepare their final plans?
Thank you. So hearing that, you have a copy of the planner's letter
We do,
and a copy of the engineer's letter
we do.
and a copy of the fire marshal's letter. And I think that's all we have been provided.
Selfridge also provided.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yep, Selfridge, yep, hiding. And a
the
copy
road
of
commission.
Selfridge's letter.
The road commission as well. that
Oh,
provided
I
some
don't,
comments.
I don't have that.
Yeah, I never received that.
We don't have that.
I can pull that up and I'll share it.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful. So planner's letter, fire marshal, Selfridge, road commission, and
Yeah, I
engineer.
have not seen the road commission one, but
You know what? If you could
I'll pull it up right
why don't we go ahead and get that out of the way?
The road commission, they kind of just put comments on.
Oh, yeah, we
I
did
didn't-
get that, yeah.
That's-
Yeah, I didn't know that was from them.
Whose comments they were.
This is from the road.
Oh,
commission.
Okay,
on the extra copy.
yeah.
I wondered what that was, actually.
Yeah, essentially what they're requesting is there's this one access drive here is not quite aligned perfectly with the street across the street. They're asking just for kind of a shifting of this to align better.
Okay.
And then they're suggesting acceleration and deceleration lanes, presumably on both Prentice and Jefferson to meet their standards.
So you do have a copy of this then?
I don't, but we can certainly get our hands.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
You could walk away with one of ours.
Yeah, I was
tonight.
gonna say, you could probably take mine at the end.
Okay, okay, great. Okay, do you want to go ahead and
Sure,
present?
sure. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction, Mr. Young. We're proposing 81 single-family condominium units on this 32-acre parcel. As Mr. Young indicated, developed as a PUD. The lots are proposed minimum lot size of 50 feet wide by 110 feet deep. I do have with me some very preliminary early elevations and floor plans of a typical unit, and I could pass those out if,
That would be lovely, thank you. And Amanda, if you want to go ahead and give him your copy,
Yeah, oh yeah, take that.
thank you.
the site does have some wetlands on it that we're working around. There's a small area of wetlands that we do anticipate needing to get a permit from Eagle to fill for the road crossing. They're near lot 2 and 6. 62 and 63. We do have public utilities, both on Jefferson and Prentice, that we would be tying into. The site's proposing a stormwater detention pond in the northeast corner to handle the stormwater from the development. Your PUD ordinance requires 25% open space, and we've exceeded that by just a little bit under an acre. So we do have some flexibility with that in order to make the adjustments that the road commission was suggesting along our entrance at Prentice. Aside from that, we're here tonight to get feedback from the planning commission on the layout before we jump into the larger packet of information that will be needed to provide to move this project forward.
Thank you. Mr. Dupre, did you want to add anything? Okay, thank you. Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Comments?
Are they all proposed to be single-story?
We're not sure.
Okay. Just asking.
If no other questions from the commissioners, I would like to defer to Mr. Young to address your letter, please.
Yes, absolutely. So as we are looking at the plan unit development review, we're following along with Article 8 of the Township's zoning ordinance, which outlines the standards and the minimum requirements for a planned unit development review. One of the things that will be considered, again, no decisions this evening, but is the property size. So for a planned unit development in a residential zone, the minimum suggested property size is 40 acres. This site is a little over 30 acres in size. You have the ability to waive this requirement when the density of the proposed PUD is consistent with that which would be expected through a development under the current zoning ordinance, and also if it's consistent with the master plan. And so I wanted to kind of just kind of draw to your attention here is presently the northern, I don't know, maybe 1/3 of the site is actually zoned general commercial right now. So this obviously would allow for a much higher intensity development on the northern part of the parcel. The black outline here is the subject site. It's actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parcels that they have kind of control over at the moment that they would combine into one to form this development. The southern 2/3 is zoned R1C district. And even if you had applied, say, the R1C, let's pretend that this northern part is zoned R1C. The density that they're asking for, 81 units on 30 acres, is in line with what could be anticipated in the R1C single-family residential zoning district.
Can I just ask, so in reading through, I just want to cut right to this. You had mentioned that it's actually a net 26.58 acres, taking into consideration the right-of-way
That's true.
and the wetlands.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
your configurations, were they based on the 30 or on the 26.58?
I looked at it both ways. 81 units would result in a gross density of 2.65 dwelling units per acre, or a net density of 3.05. In either case, it's well below what you could achieve through the R1C. It's also well below what the master plan recommends for residential, which is about 4 dwelling units per acre. So it's very much in line with what would be recommended in the master plan. But that also doesn't consider that the master plan also shows this northern portion as general commercial, and even, I think even the little corner here as multifamily residential. So essentially what they would be asking to do is put a completely single-family residential development of detached homes at this location.
Thank you.
The applicant had mentioned the open space requirement for a PUD. The ordinance requires a minimum 25% open space. This plan does show more than that presently. One of the questions that I had, that I suggested in my letter that I hope the applicant would consider is, to make use of this open space, not just let it be nothing. I mean, it's trees, right, and preservation and such, but maybe there's an opportunity to provide some amenities. Maybe it's even passive trails or a gazebo or a, picnic table or something like that. The corner of this parcel also, there's considerable open space here. So ask maybe when the final plans are submitted that we can get a little bit more detail about who would have access to this open space, what would be there, are there any amenities that might be included there. There are some general design standards for residential PUDs. One of the design standards is that the ordinance encourages some trailways to be included with it throughout the open space areas. So that's kind of, to my comment about, make it more than just, have some kind of amenities within the open space, whether it's for the benefit of the residents of the community itself or even the larger community. The ordinance encourages the applicant to use an architectural theme that kind of promotes varied architecture and design plans. They're not required to necessarily submit these concepts to you now. They did provide you with some sketches, but if you had comments about that, then you can offer it to them. But the ordinance would, again, we wouldn't want cookie cutter, identical, same color, same size, same style kind of a thing. So maybe some variety in there would be suggested. One of the things that the ordinance requires, as we know, is sidewalks and pathways to be provided along the frontage. They are showing sidewalks proposed along both Prentice and Jefferson. The one thing I wanted to call to their attention is that Jefferson Avenue in particular is planned as a regional non-motorized pathway route. So we would like to see not just a 5-foot wide sidewalk, but a minimum, 8, more likely desirable, a 10-foot wide pathway along the Jefferson frontage. And if there was some way to, connect it through this single parcel that isn't a part of this development, that would be, I think, a community benefit that we would like to see. I assume you would as well. The last thing is whether you would require a development impact statement for this project. So the ordinance allows, or at first glance requires you to, or requires the applicant to provide a development impact statement unless the planning commission waives that requirement. You can do that if you determine that it's not necessary for the evaluation of this site. It does say that a traffic study can only be waived where you determine that the development will not generate a significant amount of traffic above and beyond the traffic conditions abutting the site. So you're not required to make a decision, but maybe you can, with comments, weigh in on whether you'd like to see one when they submit their final site plan. I'd rather have them provided if you feel that one would be necessary. I mean, this is an 81-unit development that does generate traffic. No doubt about that. So, the final thing is more benefit for the applicant, just to know that at this next stage, the condominium information, like the Exhibit B, condominium plan, the master deed and bylaws, at least in draft form, will need to be submitted for your review at the next stage.
Thank you. Mr. Tanner, welcome.
Thank you.
May I have you address your letter as well, please?
Certainly, there really wasn't a whole lot to address at this point. I know in talking with Adam previously, the Prentice lift station was near capacity, so there was a concern for providing wastewater flow, or what this site would potentially create. So that was a concern in the past when others had applied or looked at doing something here. The lift station is in the process of being upgraded, and I don't know the specific time frame, but it's expected to be completed for sure by the end of September 2025. So that's would be in the time frame of when, assuming construction would begin. And then anything beyond that, just next submittal would need to have engineering details on where the proposed connections are and, everything that goes along with that, that was kind of addressed in the letter.
Any questions for the planner or the engineer from the commissioners?
I have a question.
Okay.
About, I know, I think, isn't there supposed to be a public benefit of a PUD? Isn't that something we've talked about
Yes.
in the past? And I know you mentioned the 10-foot wide path.
Mhm.
But I think, you know, when we've gone through these PUDs before, we've talked about what we consider a public benefit. And maybe we should talk about that or give some guidance on that. I definitely think the pathway, a 10-foot wide pathway along Jefferson is a huge public benefit, especially with the fact that there's some other pathways going on further down Jefferson. And in order to get grant funding, you have to have what they call logical termini. And so by having this at the end of the pathway, that would just say, we do have, it's not a path going to nowhere. It's a path that's gonna take you all the way to the Metro Park.
Directional.
And connect with the Freedom Trail.
Yeah, and the free,
And that which continues west for quite some distance.
so I would think we would definitely want to see that.
I think both those points are definitely worth mentioning and requesting comment from the applicant. So public benefit and then indication of the 10-foot wide being a meaningful addition, and then also connecting with the Freedom Trail. Have you thought about that at all, or any
I have no
comment?
objection.
Yeah, the only concern obviously is getting the path through the piece of the
the
parcel
single
that we
parcel,
don't have
yeah.
control over, which we can't make any guarantees to that, but
And
other
it would
than
be on the
that,
right of way, so.
we'll certainly
Right.
try.
Yeah, and it would be on the right of way. And so, stating that if the township were to complete that portion itself, wouldn't they go through that piece of property anyway?
Right. Yeah, it would, when designing a trail, you'd want to stay within the right of way if at all possible.
Okay.
If there's right of way there and we can get it through, I don't see it.
So as far as the traffic study, I don't think there's any concerns. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I don't think there's concerns with Metro Parkway. However, Jefferson, just in the couple of times that I've been there, particularly, you know, in the evening, there's quite a lot of traffic heading north on Jefferson. So it would be interesting to see what the impact of an additional 81 single-family units who might also be coming north in the evening would have.
And potentially, not just 81, but let's say 160. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
most homes have two drivers nowadays.
Yeah.
Or, well, granted, these are smaller homes with it looks like two-bedroom. So really not catering to a large family, but you could potentially have an additional driver. But Prentice would be my, I would definitely be looking for a traffic study to see what's coming out on Prentice now versus the impact of 81 additional units in addition to Jefferson. I think Prentice is the bigger head.
Well, I've driven by a couple times in the evening, and there was no traffic on Prentice when I was there, and, but quite a bit on Jefferson.
Okay, good, so I think a traffic study would be definitely beneficial. Any problems with that? Okay, thanks.
I would agree with both, probably the impact statement and the traffic study, just because the few items that were presented in years past for this piece of property were pretty contentious, from what I remember. I literally just sold about 2 months ago, right across the street from this development on Seaway, the corner of Seaway and Jefferson. So we have been waiting, considering that something's gonna get done here at some point. Just from a personal standpoint, I can tell you, trying to remain in this township was difficult, trying to find somewhere to move to that wasn't completely unreasonable with pricing. I'm not sure, obviously, you can't commit towards what a pricing would be in 2025, but if you were to put that out there right now, will we be looking at as far as pricing on these units?
I guess if we wanted to play the low base price, play the extras game, be based in the 380s. But I think completed units in the 5s. It's hard to do anything nice. It's almost sad. Nice
I
landscape.
found that out quickly.
We're pretty fussy builders. We're not gonna come over. We want total maintenance. We don't want this to be a development as we increase the quality. Quality is more important.
I mean, that's the point with housing stock too, as you just mentioned, Commissioner Duncan, is that as the community ages, the housing stock also ages. And so especially if there's seniors that don't have any place to move, they're stuck in the single-family housing and they're not able to do the maintenance, so the maintenance gets deferred, and then if you don't have any newer housing stock to replace it, you're not attracting the newer, younger families that are able to do the maintenance. So it's just a cycle. And that's why a diverse, not only types of units, but some newer units are very desirable as well. I mean, thank you for staying in the community.
It was tough, I'm gonna tell you, too. To find something basically in that range that you're talking about was very hard.
Well, we're happy to have you sitting here as well. Wouldn't want to leave you.
I think, I mean, what you've said, there's been a few other potential proposals here, and all we've ever heard is single-family
Yep.
housing, so.
Yep.
This is my first time that we've seen single-family housing
That fits.
that fits.
That
yeah.
fits. So, okay, so some of the things that, well, wait a minute, let's finish addressing the letters that we have. Okay, so we've done the planner, we've done the engineer.
Before we get too far away from
Yeah.
the planners, I had a question for both the planner and the applicant.
Okay.
About the open space area. You noted that the detention pond is included in the open space calculation, but in order for that to be included, you had notes that it had to be designed as a natural amenity for the benefit of the community. For the applicant, if you've seen the letter, did you have any ideas on how you would accomplish that, or Adam, what kind of things could be done?
Yeah, I actually don't know if the detention pond was included in their open space
Okay.
calculation. I think I was asking them to indicate that. But I did indicate, if you wanted, and of course, this is just a conceptual, we have no idea how big it needs to be. I'm sure you are just kind of guessing at it. They'll figure that out when they come before us for the final, because they'll need to know more details. But if they want to include any part of the detention pond as open space, I would think they need to prove to you that it's not just something that sits there, and that has a fence around it that's unused. I think it has to be something that's actually an amenity to the development, in some way. There's different ways to do it, whether it's the size of the shape or the landscaping or, access to it, or even, how it looks. That had to be determined later, but I just wanted to give them a heads up that they can't just call a detention pond open space.
If I could add to that, we did include it as open space in the calculations. And we did very preliminary design calculations to make sure we had the size appropriate, right? But there'll be a lot more detail that will go into it when we submit the final PUD plan and engineering document. There'll be a 4-bay that's required. And generally speaking, at this point, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a wet pond. So they'll have the ability to put fountains in it, or, fountains, I guess you call them, the sprinkler thingies. Other things we've done too is put wood chip paths around it, other amenities to make it more of an amenity than just a pond with a fence around.
So it won't have a fence around it? It won't
Right
be
now,
off
we
limits?
have it designed with slopes that don't require a fence. The other thing I wanted to mention too, and I think Adam indicated it in his write-up, and it will be shown on the next phase, but is the phasing. We anticipate that this project will probably be 2 phases. First phase being the northern end, it's pretty self-contained. And then the second phase being the southern part. We did not show it on the conceptual plan, but we will show it on the future.
And then there's been no thoughts of the open space on the point there, what would be done in there?
We would love to hear some feedback from the thoughts and ideas of that. Yeah, I didn't know if you had.
We want to make it nice. I don't want to make it. We're hiring, a little premature, but we're going to get landscape architects involved. And, you know, I'd like to see something nice. Some type of gardens, something, I'm losing my voice. Something pretty, something nice.
How much space is required for a soccer field?
I don't
It's not going to be a soccer.
I know. I don't think it's large enough for,
I know, I was trying to think, like, that one proposal we had pickleball courts.
Yeah.
Those are popular.
And that space is right across from the school, too.
right?
I can picture a gazebo and connecting trails and landscaping, but I would love to hear some other ideas or thoughts from the.
One thing that's very popular in the area, having lived there for 11 years, is there is a lot of dog walking. I mean, it happens every day, constantly in that area. Obviously, the bike path is huge. That's big time. You're going to find in the summertime, the traffic is brutal on the weekends along Jefferson and sometimes Prentice, the beach. But yeah, I think something nice over there, whether it's kind of like a similar, like a pocket park or something that, you know, the kids with their teachers coming across to be able to make use of some of that area would be nice also. Just because they're a little bit disappointed when I moved because you like seeing the kids play soccer over there, but we understand development's going to happen. But just, I think something for them to have access to would probably be a little nice.
So since you brought up the phasing, when you do the phasing, would it be like the infrastructure for the entire development be laid out, or would it be the south end would be completely left unaddressed and then you would come in later, or would just not develop it? I'll let you go ahead. Okay.
We're going to do the complete underground drawing.
Okay.
But only physically do
Develop.
construction of the first phase.
Okay.
And it really works out well because of the stormwater detention. All that infrastructure has to be built toward the next phase. We have a water and sewer availability on both Jefferson and Prentice. But no, there would be no activity in the second phase until that phase started.
Okay.
Any other questions regarding the planner's letter or the engineer's letter
Should
from the
we-
commission? Go ahead.
Should we talk about the 30 acres and the density? Just because we don't want to send them on their way and then have them come
Right,
back
we
and.
can, let me get the fire marshal's letter
Okay.
in and out of the way first. Mr. Shackett, may I have you address your letter, please?
Yeah, so I reviewed this. It was pretty basic. Like I said in the letter, the fire department's gonna need another full site plan review. It's gonna have to show the width of the roads, the locations of the fire hydrants, and where the no parking fire lane signs are gonna go.
Thank you. And is Mr. Baker? So you have the letter from the Selfridge, indicating its location and the zone that it's in, and it's not an issue. I don't think height is going to be an issue. I think more the retention or detention.
Open water.
Yeah, open water for, birds and animals and,
But that's just a recommendation.
yes.
It is a
Yes,
It's
it
a
is.
recommendation.
It is a recommendation, thank you. Okay.
We like our
Did-
neighbors. We also
We do want to be official.
know there's a marsh right across the street now.
Yeah, a large. Okay, did you want to, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just a question, as far as the roads, are you planning to have or offer parking on the roads, or is it gonna be no parking? What are your thoughts there? I guess I'm concerned about vehicles, because, you know, they're 40-foot wide lots, looking at your driveway, maybe 2 cars, so I guess I'm just need to understand that.
Our lots,
Can you, I'm sorry.
I think our lots are 55.
They are. The unit is 40 feet.
One of
Okay,
the
the
things
unit's
that,
40, okay, and your garage is
Conceptually-
20, so,
well, one of the things in the conceptual unit is we're already on. One of the changes is we want to make minimum size garage 24 by 18-foot wide. Because we have a 16-foot drive. When you shovel the snow, you get bumps of snow, and people have to get out and stuff. So, picture this, move down by. We're trying to address all the headaches of checking people that live in communities. One of them was garage size, driveway size. Yeah, we don't want it to look like a concrete jungle.
Right.
So we have to address this in landscape. A couple other tweaks in there were small laundry. The units will get 2,000. Concept. So we are, you know,
And you're preparing to provide, we all have just the same conceptual.
yeah, that just quick because at the last minute I gotta, and we're gonna rework. We don't wanna track housing.
No.
No, not at all. It's, you know, no, not at all. So we want variation. We really want this to be a subdivision people look at. I
So,
wish everyone did.
so will this be more like the custom home development where people will come in and pick their
Absolutely.
elevation and?
Absolutely. And we'll custom tweak anything. We are a custom builder. I know everybody calls themselves custom. We truly are. Build to suit. So, again, in this one, we're picturing,
Oh, in the
Something-
microphone, sorry.
Oh, thank
we're,
you.
we're
Yeah, thank you.
picturing some enclosed, I don't want to say gazebo, the enclosed screened-in patios, gonna have some of them. We're picturing, you know, coming off of that, nice patio, maybe some fire pits, variation of different things. So cookie cutter is not, I've never built that way. I can't even focus my brain on that, so.
So basements, no basements, slab?
If, right now, we're gearing for basements. We have a water table there to deal with. So, you know, we want to do basements is our goal, because if not, we're going to do 5-foot crawls. And there's no cost saving at that point. I'm not going to do a dirt crawl if I have to. They're going to be cemented, insulated, you know, heated, you know, do it the right way.
Yeah.
So we would prefer basements.
In the variations on the proposed house designs, single-story or single-story and two-story?
Well, I don't envision a lot of people buying colonials here, because I picture them either being very young or move-down buyers. But I do envision maybe a loft up above for grandchildren, office, storage. So right now, one of the concepts we're working on is getting a loft up there. I'm envisioning play area for grandchildren, office for mom,
Man cave?
man cave, something like this, and make it an option. If you don't need it, you don't have, but if you need it, we want it to be there. We want to have some flexibility on the sites to move these things, expand, and if somebody needs a little bigger. That's why we went from 50-foot lots to 55, to give us more freedom.
so I don't know if you ever answered my question, is there no parking on the streets? Or is there
I
parking?
I can answer that. The streets are going to be 28 feet wide. There'll be parking permitted on one side of the road and no parking on.
Okay, thank you, that was, answered my question.
28 feet wide streets?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
that does coincide with the fire code.
Say that again?
That does coincide with the fire code if it's 28 feet wide on one side.
Thank you.
Of no parking.
Thank you. Any other questions, Mr. Beckett?
Me? Oh, just the question about the 30 acres.
Oh, okay, yes, let's address that. Okay, so our ordinance requires 40 for this particular PUD, for any PUD.
Yes.
Residential zone.
And you're proposing 30.52, but as we discussed with the net, it's 26.58. So we've got a 13.42 deficiency. I don't want to call it a deficiency, but
Yeah, I mean, and we've talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
About the
That's why I
minimum
wanted
lot
to-
size, wondering if this was maybe more for a different kind of a community. But nonetheless, the ordinance does, it's basically the default is 40 acres minimum. But it does say planning commission can go allow for lower if the density proposed in the project is similar to what could be done based on the underlying zoning district. That's number one. And again, I talked about how the R1C would allow about 4.5 dwelling units per acre based on the minimum lot size. And they're well below
this
that
comes in at 3.
based on this.
Yeah.
Net,
Two.
even the net
Yeah.
density is well below that. The second thing is it consistent with the master plan? We talked about how the master plan shows the southern 2/3 is single family, which is what they're doing. And actually it goes more intense with commercial and multifamily in the northern third. So in the sense that they're choosing to not go more intense in the northern, you can argue that's even more, compatible with the master plan. And the third thing is it located near the intersection of two major streets?
Which, of course, it is.
You're all three sides really are
Major street.
major streets here. So I don't see any issue with it. Again, you don't have to make that decision, but if
Right.
there's some reason that, you didn't believe that made sense to you, it is kind of a deal breaker for the project, so.
Well, we've talked about this a lot before. There's not, I don't know that there's many 40-acre properties in
Right.
Harrison Township.
This is one of the items that we
And-
wanted to address in our,
Yes, this
Future
is
master
something
plan.
we're gonna address in the master plan, so, but I just wanted to make sure that we're not giving them direction to proceed to come back and,
Pull the rug out.
we're not so
Yeah.
sure about 30 acres.
Are we
It is-
able to set
26.
that forth now, so that it's not an issue later?
We've talked about that, actually, that's on our to-do list, is to consider reducing that minimum lot size.
I mean,
Well,
as
Consideration
For
of
the
both.
specific project, though, right now is the question.
Right, for this specific project, I think it aligns with what the ordinance says, or for situations when you could allow for less than 40 acres.
But we don't need to make a decision tonight. We're just relaying our feelings on.
Correct.
Okay.
we have the ability to make that decision regardless. Regardless of what the master plan says today, we know that we've discussed adding a
Some, like,
more comfortable.
flexible-
Yeah,
yes.
flexible, yes. Yeah, so I think we would be okay with that.
I
It
think
is,
what Amanda was, if I understood, which made sense to me, is that could be like a deal breaker if we say you can't go below 40. So I think you're poking at, do we need to at least acknowledge that
Yes.
as of today, we find that the current size site will still be accommodating to PUD?
The project has merit.
Or
as
at least
presented.
For size and
Give
merit,
them
it-
some
we-
direction that
we
we
Right.
feel
feel
this.
it has the correct size and merit,
You would think so, because why would we kick that can and
Yeah.
right.
then say, sorry, it's not
Yeah.
40 acres and go home?
we
We're
would,
fine with that, I think that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
we would greatly appreciate that because the next step is
Yeah.
quite an investment.
Yeah. So it says the planning commission may waive that minimum requirement, and I think I'd be in favor of that, based on all the reasons that the planner cited.
Would that require a formal motion, or it just,
No, I would say, is there anybody here that does have a problem with
No, I
it?
personally
Now
don't
would be
have a
the
problem
time
with that. I
to
think it
comment
fits.
on it.
I think we're all good with that.
That would be something at the next level we would actually have to
Yes.
make the motion. approve.
You would formalize it at the next meeting if they proceed.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant?
Do we like where that is kind of looking to, so we can say like, yes, you show us more
I
examples?
like the
of
story, and
that,
a- I
yes.
like the story and
I
a
like the
half.
mixture of the brick and the
Yeah.
siding.
Well, that'll all have to fall into the requirements.
But I do
Once-
like where they're going with the design concept.
Yes.
You know, with variations of that. I do like the appearance.
Yep, I do as well, and I like the size. I think it's gonna fit a population
I
that
think they
we
found-
don't have addressed.
Where I'm building, because this is 95% of what I'm building.
This is your,
This is it.
My
Sure you might want to wait? No.
so like the inside, Commissioner Duncan, is the size of the
Almost.
bedrooms in relation to the garage, something that you would find desirable? If you
Yeah, that's almost, like I said, this is 95% of what I'm building right now. About a quarter mile away.
So you did bring up the water table, and on the conceptual plan there, it's noted some wetlands areas. How would those be addressed?
Or would the wetlands be addressed?
Yeah, because it looks like some of the wetland areas extend into, some of the proposed lots.
Yeah, we do have 2 areas where we would require a permit from Eagle to fill the wetlands. The wetland consultant that we're working with feels fairly confident that we should be able to get a permit.
Okay, so you have looked into that?
Yes.
And then I think the other thing we should discuss is the development impact statement and what we're eventually going to require so they can plan for that.
I definitely, well, I think we mentioned that we definitely want to, we're going to want a traffic study. And I think we're going to want an impact study as well. Does anybody,
With the size of the development, I don't
yeah, I don't think
I don't
that's.
see why we would waive
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Yeah, I think that that's important. Anybody disagree with that?
I agree.
You agree? Larry?
Yes, absolutely.
So you're hearing that from us? Impact study, traffic study?
Nope, didn't hear it.
It's official. Someone is listening, I guarantee you. All right, any other questions for the applicant?
If I could just
Comment.
offer a comment as
Please.
far as landscaping goes. I'm assuming that you will provide some trees in your landscaping layout. And so one thing we're hearing from the forester, the DNR forester, is there's plenty of maples already. So there should be some variety of species that don't include maple. And the reason, of course, is that if you have some sort of pestilence or something, like the emerald ash borer that takes out all the ash trees, that won't happen to all the maples.
Did you say no maples or a variety?
A variety is best, but, there should be more of other things than maples. And I know maples are hard to get around not having, especially in this habitat, because maples like the clay soils and the higher water table, but if everyone has nothing but maples and something, there's a new insect that comes along and kills all the maples, then we have no trees.
Yeah, we already know the issues with the pear trees and the,
And no pear trees.
Yeah, no calorie pear trees.
yeah.
Crab apples, good.
Any other comments?
Just in the interest of this being kind of informative for back and forth here, is there anything that we didn't address that you were kind of looking for us to give comment on?
I think you've covered it all.
Any questions for us regarding what we discussed tonight? Okay, commissioners, we don't have anything to approve, so I think we can,
Everyone satisfied?
yeah, put a pin in it for now.
Yep, give us some direction.
And we'll look forward to seeing something more formal on your next visit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our third item this evening is a public hearing. Ms. Oparka?
Case 31-23 SLU, City of Mount Clemens, 24960 Crocker.
Thank you. Mr. Young, I'll have you, well, I don't know if we want to address everything, then open the public.
I can give an
Hearing.
overview of the process at least.
Let's do that.
So we
Yeah.
know why we're here and how this will work. So we have an application, am I okay with starting?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
We have an application submitted by the City of Mount Clemens. They're seeking site plan and special land use approval to establish a public utility facility, a pump station, and a water storage tank at 24960 Crocker Boulevard. This property is 4.15 acres in size. It has 210 feet of frontage on Crocker. It is presently zoned R1A Single Family Residential, and the zoning ordinance allows as a special land use public utility buildings. This proposed use fits under the public utility building, so a special land use in addition to site plan review and approval is required. Per our ordinance and state law, any special land use requires a public hearing to be held. So that is this evening, the public hearing. Newspaper notice was published, sign was put on the property, and letters were sent to all property owners within 300 feet in accordance with state law. The public hearing will need to be opened and ultimately closed after public comment is received. After the public hearing is closed, whether it's tonight or at a subsequent meeting, ultimately, the Planning Commission, you have final authority for the approval of special land uses. So it's not a recommendation to the Township Board, it would be an actual approval or denial of the special land use. The site plan, of course, is a key component of the special land use request. But really, procedurally, you always kind of handle the special land use first to make sure that that would be appropriate or that you're okay with approving it. And then you would move on to the site plan. So that is the application and the procedure this evening. If you have any questions for me at this point, I'd be glad to try and answer.
Thank you. Any questions for the planner? Okay. May I have a motion to open the public hearing, please?
So moved.
Ms. Devlin,
Support?
Mr. Tominello. To open case number 31-23- special land use, public hearing. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is now open. So we're going to have, the City of Mount Clemens or the engineer come forward and present. And then we'll open it up to the public to make your comments or address your questions. Generally, it is the engineer or the applicant's responsibility to pay attention to the questions, and then, of course, we all do as well. And when you come up to take part in the public hearing portion, you'll be limited to 3 minutes each. And your comments and questions, not to be repeated from a past person. If someone said it, we've got it. So we don't need 2 or 3 people saying the same thing. Not to try and squash your need to publicly speak, but we just want to make sure that we're efficient use of time tonight. I'm going to ask that your words be kind. We won't tolerate any abuse in any way, shape, or form. And while someone's speaking, please be mindful of comments. If you want to have discussion, please take it out into the vestibule or outside. And with that, I will ask the engineer or the representative from Mount Clemens to come forward and present, please. Hi.
Hello, good evening. My name is Laura Kropp. I'm the current mayor of Mount Clemens. I am so thankful that you're giving us this opportunity today to address the Planning Commission and thank the staff because this is a huge undertaking for the city of Mount Clemens, this entire project, and the entire staff at the Harrison Township Township Hall has been tremendous because there's a lot involved, not just with this site, but with the entire project, so thank you. Today, speaking of the site on Crocker, just to give you a little bit of background, Eagle came to the city of Mount Clemens in about 2019, and they said to us, you have to do something with your water plant. What that is up to your community, but your water plant, considering the original plant is from 1929 and the more recent addition of the plant is from 1959. We're currently making parts for it ourselves because we can't get parts. So we had to do something. And what that is, we weren't sure in the beginning of the process. So we hired an engineering firm who is with us today, Fishbeck. They've been tremendous as well. And they said to us, you have two options, essentially. Well, we had three, but we had two options that it boiled down to. And the two options were we could build a new plant next to the current plant that you know is on Jefferson in Harrison Township, or we could tie into the Great Lakes Water Authority, which the majority of your residents are located on. The resounding message that we heard from our residents was that they wanted their own plant. And when we did that, calculations from Fishbeck, when they really looked and dug into that, we found that we were upwards of $90 million. There are 5,900 accounts, including businesses and residential, 5,900 accounts on the Mount Clemens water system. So $90 million current was nowhere near what we could afford. There's no way that we could afford a new plant. So I'm here to tell you that this option of tying into the Great Lakes Water Authority is not what our residents want. And it pains me that it's not, I can't deliver on what our residents want, but it's what we have to do. Now, the Great Lakes Water Authority, the connection is in your neighborhood, right? It's right at Reimold, and it is at Reimold and Crocker. Now, I won't get too in the weeds with that because the engineers are going to go through how we got to the point where we're at and where we are at with this current site. So I'm going to introduce Maria to bring it up, but I just want to drive home to you that we want to be good neighbors and we want to be good stewards of this property. We want to make sure that we don't impact anyone negatively. We held a public hearing, we held a public informational meeting open to anybody from Harrison Township to try to answer and have dialogue and discussion with all of the residents. And we did that out of good faith because we want to be good neighbors. We and the success of Harrison Township and the success of Mount Clemens is good for both of us. So I say that, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Maria from Fishbeck, who will walk you through the project with her team.
Thank you, Ms. Croft.
Good evening. And my name is Maria Setke with Fishbeck. And with me is, first of all, Greg Shipman from the city was unable to attend today. He's pretty sick, so we've been texting him updates. So the mayor was kind enough to come. But I'm Maria Setke with Fishbeck, and with me is Eric Hansen and Brian Phillips. Eric is the lead designer of the water main, and Brian is of the pump station and tank. And we did this presentation, I think we provided this presentation last week for a lot of the residents, so some of you, this will be kind of repeat, but we'd like to go through it again. So we're going to just kind of quickly go through the existing water system in Mount Clemens, the need for the project, and just a big picture of the whole scope of the project, and then we're going to kind of go into the pump station and tank site, kind of its components, and just kind of go through cost and schedule at the end. So this is the Mount Clemens system. Right at the bottom is the water treatment plant. It's right on Jefferson Avenue on the water in Harrison Township. It brings in water from the lake and treats it, and it sends it through two water mains up to the city. Those two water mains are 20 and 24 inch, so they're their main sort of transmission mains that take the flow from the plant to the city. So they run up Crocker through Harrison Township. And then as they get into the townships, they sort of spread out and get smaller and smaller, the water mains. So that's sort of the arteries that bring in the water to the city. Along the way, there's some residents in Clinton Township that are on that water system, right off Crocker. There are a few in Harrison Township that are on Crocker that are on that water main that are going to be disconnected eventually, but now there are about 90 residents. And then the Air Force Base on top, on the corner there, is on the system as well. As you can see, there's that red line that goes through there. That is the Great Lakes Water Authority transmission main. It's a 42-inch transmission main, and it comes from Port Huron all the way to Detroit. So it's got a treatment plant in Port Huron and a bunch of treatment plants in Detroit, and they bring water from both sides. Harrison Township has 2 connections off that GLWA main, one up in Executive Drive and one down at, I think, around 16 Mile. One thing to note is that GLWA transmission main has a valve kind of right on Raymold and Crocker that allows them to close that transmission main. So if there's a break on the north side, they can close it and feed everybody from the south, or vice versa. So, and it's right on Raymold. So it kind of, it's the perfect spot, right, to connect to the system. It runs right through Harrison Township, and it connects right into the 2 mains that are the Mount Clemens main. Next slide, please. So the plant itself, I think the mayor mentioned, was originally built in 1929, so it's a pretty old plant. Through the years, it's had some upgrades done to it to keep up with the regulations and requirements of the state. So you can see there were some major upgrades in '59, then in 1980s and so on. So it is sort of a hodgepodge of a facility. Now, the staff at Mount Clemens have done a great job keeping it operational, but it really has sort of extended its useful life. A lot of the equipment, you just can't find replacements for them. Some of it is literally duct taped together. And it's time. It's just, it can't keep going for long. In fact, the state, next slide, please. Eagle has mandated to the city that they do something about this plant. So that's when we were hired to look at it and see what we can do. It's old and it still provides safe water, but at some point it's just not going to. So we've got to do something with this plant. We looked at 2 options. One is putting a plant right next to it. You can see there's some open space there right next to the plant. And the other option was tying into the Great Lakes GLWA water system. The new plant is about $90 million. We're connecting to GLWA right now is about $40 million, $42 million. So it's almost double to do that. So it's, and either way, the city does need to take a loan to do this, so it's double. So, next slide, please. So this is what we're proposing to do. Again, the red line is the GLWA transmission main. It's kind of, this is just a zoomed in of the first picture. What we want to do is connect to the GLWA transmission main right there on Crocker in Raymold, where it says proposed GLWA water system connection. Connect there, and then those 2 arteries, water main, transmission mains that take the water up to the city, they also are very old. They're cast iron from one of them is, I think, 100 years old. So we do want to replace those. So we are going to replace them in the color that's blue. So the portion that's blue is going to be replaced in the same spot, but we're going to replace them. They're just getting too old. And then the portions of those mains that are in pink, down all the way to the plant, we will abandon them. We won't need them anymore, and we'll abandon the plant down there and the intake. So all the stuff in pink will be abandoned. The stuff in blue is what we're going to be constructing, and we're going to be connecting to the GLWA transmission main. Now, as part of that, we do need to build a pump station and a storage tank. When the flow we're going to be getting from GLWA may not always meet the pressures we need to feed all the city, so we do need that pump station to be able to boost that pressure that comes in sometimes, to be able to feed the whole city. We also need that tank there for redundancy and to lower the rates, just like Harrison Township. You guys have a tank for the exact same reason. It provides redundancy and it lowers your rates, makes you from a max day peak hour customer to max day. So Mount Clemens needs to do the same thing. The pump station needs to be near to that connection, because we need to boost it before we bring in, before the connections to the Clinton residents or the Mount Clemens residents. So that pump station has to be as close to that connection to GLWA as possible. And the tank, the closer it is to the pump, if we keep it close to the pump station, we can keep it ground tank. If we separate them hydraulically, then it has to be one of those elevated, 100-foot storage tanks. So really, that is the only spot. We've got to build the pump station and the tank between the connection and the first set of residents in Clinton Township. And there really is no other place but that. And it was almost a miracle that we found that property to put it in. We understand, but we got to do it before we feed the residents. So that's what we're proposing to do. And as part of that, the residents in Harrison Township that are off those pink lines will be disconnected and tied into the Harrison water system. So that's the overall project scope. That's just a kind of an example of what the tank, since it's not elevated, it's a ground tank, will look like, and the pump station. That's one we built in Grand Ledge. Sort of, but we'll show you in a minute. We've done some renderings, so we'll see them. So, but just an example. So that's the property itself. You can see the I-94 freeway and Crocker Road. The orange, yellow circle would be the tank, the ground tank, and the yellow-orange rectangle is the pump station. We'll have a driveway that comes in with the ability to kind of turn and go back. There will be a pond in the back, detention pond that will be dry most of the time. This is not a wet pond, this will be a dry pond. But it's also sized to handle the volume from the tank if needed. The two areas in green, there's actually regulated wetlands on site. So we are going to be avoiding them and leaving them as are. So the one on the kind of west and right there in front of the entrance, we are going to leave those. Those are wetlands, so we're going to leave them as is. So the red dash is the boundary of the property, but there's a black dash lines. I think if you can see it, that's the limits of our excavation and work. So anything outside of that, we don't plan to touch. We're just going to be working inside that dashed black line. The pump station itself is going to be 40 by 104 feet dimensions. Originally, this is the original size of the tank. It was going to be 36 feet height to the edges of the wall and 100-foot diameter. That didn't include the dome. Next one. You want to take over? We'll go through the detail.
So we are making an effort to preserve as much of the land as possible. Right now, we're at about 60% not being touched. That includes 1.3 acres of the wetland and then an additional 1.2 beyond that. The site is 4.15. I'm sorry, if you could just take it. Oh, yeah, Eric Hansen.
All right, so I'm Brian Phillips with Fishbeck, and I'm going to go through some of the components that are on the site and then some of the renderings that we've developed. So the major structure that'll be built on the site is the ground storage tank. What we're proposing to use there is a precast concrete ground storage tank. So there would be a concrete base slab that's poured sort of in the upper left corner there, and the wall panels are poured precast on the site, and then they're tilted up around the perimeter of the tank, and then the lid's placed on there. So it's a 3-component tank. There's the precast panels, or sort of the first layer. There's a steel diaphragm that forms the second layer, and then they wrap reinforcing strands around it and shotcrete it. I point out some of these details just to let you know it's intentionally selected because going to be critical infrastructure for the community, and we don't want to have anybody concerned about the longevity of the tank or if the tank could rupture and flood out properties or homes. These are also tanks with the state that are required to be taken offline and inspected every 5 years. Either it would be completely drained down or a remote operated vehicle would go in and televise it. That's a report that needs to be submitted to the state. Any issues that are noted need to be addressed when there's still small issues. So it's continually monitored tank. There's two major manufacturers of these tanks. Reached out to talk to one of them recently and noted their track record. They've built over 3,500 of these tanks around the country over a period of 90 years, and they've had 0 catastrophic failures. Like I said, these are monitored, usually do small spot repairs if something's starting to go. The size of the tank needs to be at 2 million gallons of water volume. So we came up with that by looking at the historical demands of the water system, so on an average day and on a max day. We take into consideration how much water you would need if you had a fire flow event, or if you had like a water main break and you needed to survive off the water that's in the tank for a period of time. Those are standard equations that are used across our industry. When you plug in all of the demands and those high fire flows and other needs, you would come up to 2 million gallons. So that's the demand, that's the volume we're trying to satisfy here. And we can achieve that with various different diameters and heights. Slide. So this is the site Maria talked about already. What we did was develop some renderings to try to help describe how it would fit on the site and how it aligns with the neighbors. So the red line is the limits of the disturbance right now. So the back upper left is that detention pond and the pump station and tank. Maria talked about we do need to have emergency standby power, so a generator. That's the white box to the left of the pump station. And we also have some driveway and a turnaround area so that trucks could get onto the site just for maintenance of the pumps, if that would ever be. Next slide. We'll get into the lighting a little bit more, but this slide shows the types of lighting and the space of lighting that we're proposing to use. These would be downcast lights, shielded from scatter off of our property. We would either be building mounted, or we would have lower height poles, only 15 feet high, only where necessary. And I'll show some slides later that will show that the foot candles from these lights would not leave our property, which complies with zoning ordinance. Slide. So this would be a view if you were over Crocker, sort of looking towards the south. We've tried to maintain as much of a setback as we can. This does satisfy the zoning requirement for setback, but we are fairly close to the neighbor to the south there between 94. That you can just see a slice of it up in the upper left in our tank. Again with the lighting. So this would be a view if you were standing on Crocker, sort of looking onto the site. Do propose to have, so the rendering software we used aligns with the landscaping plan that was included in the documents that were submitted. Certainly open to suggestions on additional trees or additional screening that might be needed, but this is where we were starting from. We do need to have the driveway jog there to the left to miss the wetland that's off to the left near to you. As Eric said, there's the wetland that's been delineated by Fishbeck, and then there's also a 25-foot barrier that we're not allowed to be within either, and we plan to stay outside of that 25-foot barrier. Slide. Similar with the lighting. We have a video. If you want to play, we can, or we have additional renderings, and we could come back to that. It's up to you. This would kind of fly around the site if it's beneficial. No, we did not include any maples, thankfully. If we did go through and revise, there's some renderings at the end. We had based this off of some earlier imagery. The current owner has taken out some of the trees. The city of Mount Clemens doesn't own the property right now. So anything that's been done to the site to date has not been Mount Clemens. But we revised some of the renderings at the end of our presentation to more accurately represent current condition. So within the confines of the building, it's going to be a building that has an at-grade level and a basement. The basement really functions as sort of a pipe gallery. So the pipes coming in from Great Lakes Water Authority, the pipe leaving to fill the tank. If you're allowing water to sort of be banked in the tank, pumps are drawing back out of that tank, more piping that comes into the basement, and then water would either flow directly from Great Lakes Water Authority through our building back up to Mount Clemens, or the water would come from Great Lakes Water Authority, fill our tank, and we would pump it out as needed, and it would leave through those same mains. So there's the two main lines coming up Crocker that Maria showed. Those would come up to our driveway, turn, come onto the site. Two lines would come into the building, and two lines would be. Within that building, on the first floor, we'll have 3 pumps initially installed with room for a fourth. That's that gray one to the left, the 200 horsepower pumps. We'll have power distribution equipment within the building for powering those loads. In the lower right corner, we'll have a meter station. So one of the things we've done in many of the discussions with Great Lakes Water Authority is get them to agree to allow us to put the meters inside of our building. So usually Great Lakes Water Authority would want to have a meter chamber and the PRV chamber right near the tap, which would be over by the school on Reimold. We had a lot of concerns about the disturbance in that area during construction. It's right where I think a lot of the kids get picked up and dropped off. And then also long-term, utility needs to frequently go there and perform maintenance on that. Every time you do that, it would disrupt traffic, which is already a dangerous intersection. So Great Lakes Water Authority agreed to allow us to move those assets into our building. That alleviates those concerns. Reimold, also later when we do maintenance, they can be doing it on our site, sort of off of the main thruway there. That's that dedicated room in the lower right. And in the web of ductwork, we have chosen to bring all of our HVAC equipment in. So oftentimes in utility buildings like this, you'll see large fans where you're just moving a lot of air through the building to cool the building. In the summertime, those fans generate a lot of noise. We understand that would be a concern. So all of the air, fresh air coming in and relief air would be handled by units sitting within the building to try to make that as quiet as we can. We will have a condenser, so a air conditioner to condition the space and to help with dehumidification. So we would have, like you would have for a home air conditioner unit. Units are out on a pad with a fan. So that would be the loudest component of our building. The pumps, what we're proposing is a masonry inner wall, 8-inch block wall, grouted wall, and then renderings here show a masonry exterior, so an insulated cavity wall, technical term, but we've revised the renderings to show a different facade to comply with some of the planner's comments. But the intent is to have a well-insulated masonry building that can be able to mask any of the noises generated by the pumps and limit any noise leaving our building and onto property. Got into the HVAC equipment, that'll be inside. The pumps, the frequency of running the pumps would be on an average day. One pump, one of the 3 would run at a low speed nearly all day long, and then on a max day, so the hottest day in the summer, one pump would run at full speed and another pump would cycle on and off. Again, we're designing the building to try to limit any noise leaving the building. You would know it, obviously, if you're in the building, you would hear the pumps running, but we're trying to limit anything leaving the building. Slide. So the one component that is going to generate the most noise is the generator. We're required as a public utility to provide continuous pressure. That's both for people to have water to drink, but also in the case of if you had a power outage and a fire, we need to be able to keep the system pressurized. So we have to provide an emergency standby power generator. That generator would be sized to run the 2 pumps that I mentioned, plus some miscellaneous building loads. And what we're proposing to do is to put that generator in a sound attenuated enclosure. So it's basically a large insulated box around it that suppresses the noise from the generator. And then there's large hoods that for the cooling air of the air coming into the generator, cooling the generator, and then the air leaving. And I'll show that in another slide to try to keep the noise as quiet as possible. So for a sound attenuated closure, there's a range of noise that's defined as a level 2, that's 63 to 78 decibels. Gave some examples of other kind of relatable components there on the side of the table. Just for reference, I also looked up what a normal whole house generator would be for any regular residence. So usually that's 10 to 20 kilowatt of capacity. And those range from 65 to 75, 80 decimals is sort of the normal range for what you would buy, perhaps like a Generac generator, something like that. The portable units that are on wheels, those would be even louder. They don't have any of the closure around them. So our generator is 500 kilowatts, so hundreds of times bigger than the home ones, but we're still going to be within that same range that you would expect from a small whole house generator. I won't try to get too far into the weeds of the acoustic scale here. It is logarithmic, so it's a little confusing, but for every 10 decimals you increase, the apparent noise doubles. So it's not a linear scale here. I point that out because as you get further and further away, you will see a 6 decimal drop. That's important because if you look at the distance from the generator to the various houses around the property, we're more than double of that 23 feet. So you would see a drop in the 60s to low 70s down into maybe the high 50s, mid 60s. So we're getting into the range of passing vehicle conversation. Obviously, that's going to need to run when the power's out. How long the power's out is how long it's going to have to run. We do have to run it. We're regulated to run it and exercise it. We have to prove that it's going to work when we need it because it's critical. So that's every 2 weeks, we'll have to run it for 30 minutes. That can be at any time of the day. It can be any day. Right now, I think in what we submitted so far, we're proposing to do that at Tuesdays at 10 a.m. From 10 a.m. to 10:30, it would run, go through a routine and prove that it's working properly. That's the largest noise generator, but it would only, as long as the power is not out, it's going to run 30 minutes every 2 weeks. Slide. So this is a picture of it. This is a larger one, but it was at a beach town with local residents nearby. It's the same level 2 sound attenuated enclosure. There's large scooped hoods that direct the air in, and then any of the exhaust air, which is some of the loudest noise, goes up into the air rather than out horizontally. And that's similar to what we would be proposing. You can see there's a large box around the generator and doors to kind of get into the generator that's within. Slide. So lighting, we're trying to minimize how much light we're using on the site. We do need to have some lighting because for security reasons, because it's critical infrastructure again. So downcast lighting, lower than the max required. I think the zoning ordinance mentioned 25. We're proposing 15 feet high. The fixtures would all be on dimmers, so if there's no activity on the site, they would dim down to a fraction of their full capacity motion sensors. The goal there is to minimize impact to any neighbors, disturbance to wildlife, whatnot. The pump station and the storage tank are shown there. I know it's kind of faint, but the line is when we programmed into our three-dimensional model, the fixtures, the height of the fixtures, the power of the fixtures, where would the foot candle line stop where you're no longer impacting ground? And that line depicts that. So you can see we're not having any impact on surrounding properties as far as lighting goes. Slide.
So I think we meant, sorry, it's tall. Thank you. We mentioned earlier that right now we think this is about a $42 million project. The city can't even afford a $42 million project, let alone, $90 million to build a new plant. So we did apply for a state, drinking water state revolving fund loan to help pay for this. And these are loans provided by the state to help communities with their water or wastewater infrastructure. They're 20-year loans. They're about a 2% interest rate. But as part of that, with a lot of begging, we were also able to get a grant from the state through the ARPA funds for $20 million. So the loan, $42 million with the grant of $20 million, so the actual loan itself will only be $20 million. But all of that is contingent upon us building this, starting October of 2024. So we have to finish the design and go out to bid in May. These are dates dictated by the state, get contractors in by July, and start construction in October. If we don't do that, we lose the $20 million in grant money. And the city just can't afford a $42 million loan. I think they're barely going to afford a $20 million loan. But that's kind of the constraint we're in. We were lucky to get the $20 million. The state recognizes the need for this project, that the city really has no choice. They are requiring them to replace this treatment plant, and this is the cheapest solution we've got to replacing that plant. So, and for that, they've helped with the $20 million. But again, that is our deadline. We do have to start construction in the fall of 2024. Next slide. This is pretty complicated, but basically, this is our schedule. We are in the construction phase, as we just mentioned. We'll start, if all goes well. Oh, we're in design phase? Sorry. No, design. We're in the design. We will start construction in the fall, if all goes well. We will start with the construction of the water main that on Crocker, and the pump station. The pump station or tank is going to be our longest lead time, not so much for it, but for the equipment. It's just hard to get electrical equipment these days. So the bulk of the construction of the tank and the pump station will be in 2025. And then we'll build it all, and then we'll sit a little bit and wait for the generator, the control cabinets, all the electrical equipment. We'll finish it all up in 2026, do all the testing, put everything in line, and we should be done with construction and be live in 2027. So it's quite a big project.
2027?
2027. It is a 3-year project. It is that big. But there's a lot of sort of build and wait just because of equipment. It's mostly electrical equipment. It's right now taking 64 weeks to get a generator. Just, if things change and, the supply and demand improves, then it'll get shorter and we can build it shorter. But the majority of the work on the site itself will be in 2025. So revised renderings, might take it for you.
I guess one thing I want on the timeline real quick was the work that was going to happen in 2027. So we would get the water main in, the pump station and tank constructed and everything proven out. We would start operating that and make sure that it's all reliable. And then we would pivot to decommissioning the water plant that's on Lakeshore. So that means fully demolishing it down to below grade and turning that site over. So and that would also be the intake. There's a pipeline that goes out into the lake. We would have to do we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers to demolish properly the intake crib that's out in the water. So that's, the work in 2027 would be out at the lakeshore. There wouldn't be anything happening anymore along Crocker or at this property. So some of the planners' comments, we received those here in the last few days. The renderings that I've showed thus far were what was depicted at the public meeting that we had prior week. And we tried to make some adjustments to those to just depict how we might address those concerns. So the tank that we had showed you previously was 100-foot in diameter and 36-foot sidewall height. There'd be a dome that would go up to around 45 feet. And we understood that one of the constraints would be that we would need to stay under 30 feet for the zoned type of zoning for this property. So what we've done is revise the tank design And so it would no longer have a dome. It would still be the same concrete base slab, precast walls that tilt up, the strands that go around, but the wall height would only go to 29 feet. And then there would be a flat roof, and there would be columns within the tank. That way, all of the components of the tank could stay underneath that 30-foot ceiling. That does mean that we still need the 2 million gallons like we talked about before. That means where we were going to be 100 foot in diameter, now we're going to need to be 114 in diameter. So it gets shorter and squattier, but a little bit bigger diameter. What we chose to do is hold the, I'll call south down, north up. We held the setback from the property edge where it was before because we're already very close to that neighbor to the south and we didn't want to get any closer. So that meant that the tank sort of pushed to the north. We're going to need to reduce some of the pavement area and then move the pump station slightly to the north as well, but we're still well within the setback there. We're around 47 feet and now we're going to be closer to 37. We also had to shift the pump station slightly to the left just to make everything fit. So that was our effort to try to address that concern. We do think we can still fit the volume we need. It would still look similar. It would stay underneath that 30-foot limit. Next slide, please. So this is showing kind of a comparison of those two. The image on the left is the previous layout. The image on the right is the new updated layout. We also went in, we had another week here since our last meeting, and we tried to update the geometry of the houses to be a little bit more accurate and show kind of their location of some of the pools. And also tried to make the vegetation a little more realistic. Like I said, the current owner of the property has already did some clearing, and we didn't want to paint an overly optimistic picture of screening. So, next photo. So this would be the revised layout, standing on Crocker, looking onto our site. You can see the tank more prominently. Go ahead, next slide. So this is a view standing at the gate, looking at the building. Another one of the comments was before we were showing a full masonry exterior, and a comment was that 75% of the street-facing side of the building needed to be fiber cement siding. So what we're proposing to try to both comply with that requirement and make the building look more residential, fit in with the surroundings, is to have a brick band around the bottom and then have requested fiber cement siding around the perimeter, and we would do that not only on the street-facing side, the Crocker side, but all around, so that way the faces that the neighbors would see would also look more residential and less utility. The same proposed lighting is planned here. This would be showing that in sort of a dimmed fashion when it's non-active on-site. This would be the neighbor to the south, so you'd be sort of looking, the site's on a 45-degree angle, so it's technically looking west, but that is the closest neighbor to our tank. This would be sort of standing in the front yard. Slide. And this would, excuse me, be the neighbor on Crocker, standing at their driveway, looking to the south. So happy to questions.
Yes, actually, I have several to start out before we allow the public to come up. So I just wanted to ask, so you indicated that it would be 90 million for a brand-new facility, and that, of course, Mount Clemens doesn't have that to cover. The loan from the state and the grant from the state, was that price dependent on the 42 million? And if you were to build your own at 90 million, how much would a loan be from the state? What's the maximum of the loan and a grant that you could receive from the state?
So the state will only give you a loan for the most cost-effective option. So when they, because the residents wanted the plant, we went to the state first with the plant option, and they said, no, the other one's cheaper. We will only give you the loan and the grant for the more cost-effective option.
So,
They also said that within the permitting process for whichever facility, part of that permit application is is the project feasible for affordability by its users? And so they said that we would never meet the requirement of the $90 million.
since you only have 5,900 accounts.
Exactly. And I will add that when that site was built, right, that water plant, the initial water plant in 1929, you have to remember, Mount Clemens itself wasn't being short-sighted. It provided water for all of Harrison Township, all of Clinton Township, and all of Mount Clemens. It was that the Great Lakes Water Authority came in and offered, many years later, much lower water rates to Harrison Township and to Clinton Township, and those communities left the Mount Clemens site. And so, that facility, it wasn't as if we were just saying, oh, we want our own water plant, right? We were a regional water distributor at one point, so just wanted to kind of clarify that.
Thank you. So, starting October 24th, and completing in July of 2027, but as Mr. Phillips indicated, that July 2027 is technically the whole 9 yards,
Yes.
including the cleanup on the lakeshore side. So what's the completion date for the proposed completion date for the Crocker?
Can you go to that?
Yes.
And so one thing we'll say is that is our schedule. A contractor can come in and change it a little bit, shorten it. They won't extend it. They'll probably shorten it and, come up with something better.
So
But-
I can't
Yeah,
tell
no,
from
no,
here
I
what that
was
is.
looking at it for myself. Yep. So it would be November of 2026 is when we would be done with the water main on Crocker and the work at the tank site,
And
everything.
so if this moves forward, proposed November of 2026, that's when the site would be operational and the generator would be functioning?
Yep.
Cycling every 2 weeks?
Yep.
And so on?
We'd have a period of tests. We'll make sure it's working okay. And once we make sure it's working okay, that's when we'll abandon the plant. We won't start abandoning the plant till we make sure everything is working fine. And then we'll cut the water mains from the plant, and then we'll start abandoning the plant and the pink lines that were going south. Yep.
So every 5 years, it's up for review based on state requirements. And I think you mentioned that it could be completely drained at that point? Did
Yeah,
I hear that correctly?
The tank? Yeah.
The tank?
So the tank, we have piping and controls where if Great Lakes Water Authority is giving us enough pressure, we can take water straight from their main, run it through our building and into Mount Clemens. So we would time it in the year where we could take our tank and drain it completely, walk inside and inspect it. If we have to have the tank online and still need to do the inspection, they do have remote operated, basically submarines that can do those inspections.
And so when that occurs, service is not lost. It just would be
service wouldn't be
transferred
lost.
from the 42-inch water main.
Yeah, all of the storage tanks across the entire state get inspected on a regular basis,
Okay.
routine.
Okay, so the current owner has removed a great deal of landscaping and greenery, which has been a barrier to that property from the residents and from Crocker Boulevard. You showed 2 renderings there. The first rendering where there was a lot of landscaping in place, which I assume was during your original
Yeah, that was
planning.
how we understood it to be
Right,
before.
and your
then
second rendering
we're like-
is where there's a lot of landscaping that's missing.
And just want to be completely clear, there's a contingent offer or an agreement for a price on this, but that is hinging on approval of this. Mount Clemens has nothing to do with any of the trees or any of the disturbance site. The only things we've done on site are take some soil borings, some survey, to allow us to develop the design enough to make sure that this was viable, but no trees that were.
So we really don't know why the current owner has stripped the land.
We've heard of things, but I don't know if we're,
He also took down the house that was.
Can you come up to the
Oh,
microphone?
I'm
please?
sorry. He also took down the house that was there, but yeah, we assume it, just to get it ready for sale, but we can't speak for.
And so if this moves forward, is the city of Mount Clemens prepared to return as much of that property back to its originally populated landscape to provide a significant barrier visually between the neighborhoods surrounding, the homes surrounding, and Crocker Boulevard?
I believe that I can speak for the entire Mount Clemens staff and residents that if this body were to approve this site, we would put trees back, as many as we could. Because yes, absolutely, we need this project to happen.
And
If I may also, the areas that are not, that won't have trees, those will have grass that will be mowed by the city staff. So the area will be maintained. You can see around there where there is grass, that all will be mowed and maintained by the city.
And wouldn't it, I'm just going to throw this out there, and wouldn't it make sense to have a more densely treed landscape, less maintenance? I mean, is there a significant reason for a lot of greenery? I mean, the lawn?
Around it, yes, so access, so if they need to do maintenance for the tank and stuff, they do need to be able to get to the tank, so we do need to keep that area around it free of trees a little bit, just like we're showing.
And what is planned for the lakeshore property? Once the building, the existing structure is removed and the piping is
I will be completely,
abandoned, I believe was
I will
the
be
word?
completely honest with you on that. We must get every single penny that we can for that property. So we need to get that $20 million much lower because of that 5,900 accounts, right?
So Mount Clemens
it's-
is going to.
We will sell that property and we will sell it for the highest amount that we can get. We have no intention of giving that property away. So just to be clear.
Okay, those were my questions. Commissioners, do you want to ask any questions
Yeah, I have
before
some.
we allow the public to speak?
I have some.
Okay, so you all have to take note of everything that's being asked if you're not able to answer right away. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Batcha.
This would be for, I guess, Maria, because you made the statement. Early in your presentation, you made reference that it was a quote-unquote miracle that you found this site. It's an interesting choice of words, but those are the words. So I got a number of questions associated with that. First question is, when and how did you become aware of this miracle?
I believe the city manager pointed out.
Microphone, please.
Sorry, city manager found the property. We've been looking up and down. We tried a property in Clinton Township that was available at first, but that fell through. It was just further north from here. It's the Trinity Church property, I believe. That fell through. So we're looking up and down, and I think, either found it a for sale sign, or I'm not sure, but the city manager found the property. Yeah.
Okay? When did that occur, though?
Yeah.
It was a little more to it than that. He had driven by and saw the clearings that you guys were referring to, and that it was a cleared out property now and a vacant property. And so he called the township and tried to find out who the owner is. And that was, he went to the property owner's house and knocked on his door.
So the wind part then would have been shortly after the clearing, which was less than a year ago?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The Trinity site, I think, fell through sometime this summer, so that's when we started looking for another property.
Gotcha. So the second part of the question is, could you explain the logic in, and I'm going to be making reference to a Great Lakes Water Authority connection evaluation prepared in May of 2022?
Yes.
So, and my questions are going to dig into this a little bit more, but still want to poke at, still want to poke at a bit more about this site, because everybody's in this room because this site. Nobody in this room is opposed to you having water. We're here because you chose a site in Harrison Township for Mount Clemens, so that's what's going to create all the intrigue and whatever other thoughts people have. But, so this is done in May of 2022, speaks to a number of the issues that you've addressed in your presentation relative to age of structure, size of lines, requirements for storage. It's all referenced in here. And it talks about, I mean, I thought there was some references to cost and everything, but this is what I'm really intrigued about. So a study was done here in order to solve your problem, and you didn't even have a site selected to solve your problem? So, I mean, that is like really being, I guess, a whole bunch of words that's associated with having such a big master plan, and you didn't even know where you're going to put any of this apparatus. Could you speak to, could you speak to that thought process that you're going to go through this big ambitious plan to solve the problem, yet didn't know where you're going to put tanks or where you're going to put a pump building?
So as part of that study, we developed a hydraulic model for the entire Mount Clemens system. And we knew that there were multiple locations in the site where we were going to try to put an elevated storage tank. That was our initial goal. It's most efficient if you're buying pressurized water from Great Lakes Water Authority to keep that pressure and put it into an elevated storage tank, not have to repump. Site after site kept falling through where we were trying to use elevated storage. And so the timing of the planning document for the Drinking Water Revolving Fund that Maria mentioned, dictated that we had to submit at a certain time to keep the process rolling. So we had ideas of where we could put tanks, and we came up with cost estimates that would cover that, and moved forward with that plan. Those, like I said, continued to fall apart. Either we couldn't get approval to use the land or wasn't politically viable, and so we had to fall back to this plan. We looked at the Trinity site, we looked at the golf course, trying to work with that owner, that fell apart, and that was when we came to this property. Our focus, the challenge is our focus is in a fairly limited area. We need to be as close as we can to those connections, so it limits us in our options by using ground storage. This is the best engineering location that we could find for the city, and still try to design a project that fell within the costs that we had developed back when we were hoping to do an elevated tank. I don't know if that helps answer it, or.
It's an answer.
It's evolved.
Yeah.
This has been iteration 12 or something on the project. It's been a challenge.
So let me follow up to that, though, because it was going to actually be another part of my question. So I can respect the constraint that the state would impose about the amount of money they would borrow based upon the most cost-effective solution. I mean, it protects everybody, so that makes complete logic to me. But where I'm struggling still is the most cost-effective solution is currently on a presumption that you can go on another township's land. And wouldn't the most cost-effective solution be the solution that is within the city limits of Mount Clemens? Most cost-effective solution? Isn't that the most cost-effective solution for the state to determine?
So if we go any further up Crocker, we talked about having to disconnect residents there. If we could find a 4-acre parcel right within Mount Clemens, right at the border, and we would still have to disconnect all of Crocker Township on the way up. So, or Clinton Township, sorry, fixing up the road.
No, I mean, when we submitted for the grant, we did state that we're still looking for the site for the tank and the booster station, and the state understood that, but cost-effective, money-wise, it was, half the cost of the plant. So, they knew we had 8 months of design, which is what, we were told we had the money in September or October of this year. We had to apply back in, we had to submit the plan in May. So we were working on the plan to get it to them these are dates that we have no control over. And we told them we were, still working on a location for this stuff, so they know that. So we don't get the money until this is all obviously secure.
No, I understand
So
that.
if we don't, but yeah, it's the dates they set. It's kind of one of those, you have to submit for the loan before you have your design complete. It's
So to
not the
take
most
it
optimal.
to the next logical question, and you might be going this way as well, it's 4 acres, it's 4 acres, it's 4 acres, and it's gonna look like that if it's on Crocker, if it's in Mount Clemens, if it's next to the YMCA, if it's any place else, that's basically what it's gonna look like, and it's gonna occupy about 4-ish acres. Is that accurate?
No, if we have to go in Mount Clemens, that tank would end up having to be one of those elevated tanks, because it needs to be next to the pump station, or it has to be elevated. Those 100-foot ones that stick up on the air.
And that entire 42-inch water main that goes from Port Huron all the way to Detroit, that's the only location for
So-
the,
Can you go back to that? That's the optimal location, because there's that valve on it that I'd mentioned earlier, that if you close it, you can feed from both sides. So we're going to tap it on either side of the valve for redundancy. So in that spot right there, we can do both taps in the same spot. So if we can't tap it here, we're going to have to do 2 taps in 2 different locations.
and what's the cost of that?
Well, I got to run a whole bunch of water main back to here. So, back to the artery so we can feed the city. So that is the one location where the 2 connections we do are right next to each other. There's just going to be 100-foot either side of that valve. It's kind of hard to see, but there literally is 2 connections
Is
there.
that the wider portion that's indicated there?
Can I?
Yes, please.
Right here, the valve is right here on the red line, on the transmission. So we're going to do a connection here and a connection here. So we'll be on either side of it, and one will feed this line and one will feed that. So our 2 redundancies are in the same spot.
So proximity to the existing is the critical piece.
Yep.
And the 42-inch water main.
Yes.
Okay.
I know
So it literally is, it all has to be here.
We use the word miracle, maybe that's overstating it, but the coincidence is that valve happens to align almost right next to where the 2 major trunk lines that feed the entire city for the last 100 years go right by. That's the fortunate. That's why this site makes so much engineering sense for this infrastructure.
You had, I believe I heard you reference that you also applied for a similar site in Clinton Township? Did I hear, I heard Clinton Township referenced in the response.
The Trinity Church, yeah.
So that fell through by, were they trying to do a PUD, or what was that process all about? I mean, were they trying to do an SLU?
The Harrison Township trustees, the Clinton Township trustees, I'm sorry, it's been a long day. The Clinton Township trustees, they passed a resolution that no water infrastructure essentially could be built,
Based on this request?
based on hearing that we were considering a site.
Got it.
And we also looked at the golf course as well, but he didn't want to sell.
Right. So in the same report here, it does make reference, although this report here never, again, that's why I was poking at the question about location of pump station, because it was odd to me that such an ambitious project never even addressed it. Struck me as a flaw. But this does address, though, storage tanks quite a bit. And this report that was done in May of 2022 addresses multiple options, of which none of these options, they're all elevated, they're all on Mount Clemens property, they all make sense, at least as me as the reader. Why are those no longer on the table? Because I believe the final recommendation is, in fact, to do, let me read, I mean, you guys wrote it, so I'm going to be stating something you already know, but I do, before you answer, just let me finish reading the final recommendation. Final recommendation was, final recommendation gets into saying to the existing 1 million gallon storage tank, which will currently exist
And will remain.
and will remain, and then the recommendation is to build an additional 1 million gallon elevated storage tank. So that was a recommendation here, to just do another 1 million gallons. So A, I got two questions here, which is, this is still being proposed to be in Mount Clemens, these alternate locations of 1 million gallons. So I get it, we're in Harrison Township now, which opens up a whole other conversation. But now we've gone for another 1 million gallons to 2 million gallons. So what's the logic in that?
Part of that gets into the usable volume of the tank. So when it's in the air, you can use the whole volume of the tank. When it's on the ground, the bottom 5 feet of the tank are not usable volume. We don't have enough suction pressure for our pumps.
Right.
That's some of it. I'd have to look at the report to see exactly what you're talking about. Some of the sites we looked at had hydraulic benefits and drawbacks as well, like trying to be as far away from the existing 1 million gallon tank as we can helps to equalize pressures and fire flow capacity around the system. So that was some of the drawbacks of tanks that were further in the north, closer to the current tank.
So what this had suggested was to maintain the 1 million gallon tank at Madison Avenue and Inglewood Street, and to build a new elevated 1 million gallon tank at Shadyside Park is what the recommendation was.
That was our preliminary screening when we went through the option, was to build there. And as we started to do wetland surveys, look at the path and the size of the water main that we would need to get that tank, we would be going through a very dense residential area, having to get easements from many houses.
Cross between houses in Clinton Township to get there, cross under the river, go through wetlands. So it just,
The cost of that option blew up dramatically from the time when we probably wrote that report, but those were some of the challenges that made us rule out the Shady Side Park option.
So there was another option here that just suggested to remove the existing 1 million gallon tank and just build a new 2 million gallon tank on Mount Clemens property. Right? So where is it, why is
the
that?
city, the operators could not, we discussed that with them, and they felt that it was too risky to be out for a period without any tank. So we couldn't take it down, we couldn't fit one next to it, we'd have to take that one down, demolish it, and build a bigger one, and it was too risky for the city to be probably a year without storage whatsoever. So that killed that option.
But then you gotta still weigh the risk of that versus going to other communities to try to find land to satisfy your infrastructure requirements. But I get it, I mean, it's a risk analysis that you gotta go through. So as it relates to, water pressure, so this does talk about some risk in the current system about variation in water pressure. And argument is being made, that's where the pump station helps to mitigate that risk. Has there been any studies done for surrounding pump stations that are supporting general regional areas that those stations just couldn't be upgraded in order to improve pressure?
So, you go ahead.
So you say like connecting to a neighboring community and trying to be supplied by them?
No,
Yes.
is there a regional, are pump stations regional? I'm getting,
No,
so everything
pump
pump station is
stations
gonna
are-
be a local community providing a pump station to support whatever their demands are.
Yeah, so
And
when we
us-
looked at so Great Lakes Water Authority will guarantee a certain amount of pressure in that 42-inch main. And when we looked at that pressure and could we fill our tank and provide a minimum 35 PSI of pressure to Mount Clemens, the answer is no. So we're forced to then put in pumps that when the pressure is not sufficient in the 42-inch main, that we can boost that pressure and adequately provide pressure and fire flow for Mount Clemens. So that's,
Like the northern portions of Mount Clemens. So that's why we.
You said, I thought I heard earlier, there's 5,900 users of the,
There are 5,900 accounts.
that would be actual service leads to a property, a home, a business.
That pays.
Fair. I
It's
use users, that could be,
5,900
that
bills.
could be people, so it's, you got
Yeah.
5,900 bills that are being submitted.
Exactly.
Whatever you're seeking.
Which I will also add that at any given billing cycle, our rate of delinquency is typically 40%.
Question for the township engineer, I don't, does Harrison Township have pumping stations?
Not with the way their system is set up.
No? How many accounts does Harrison Township have?
That I don't know.
Does anybody?
About 14,000, 13,000.
We got 13,000 accounts with no pumping station, is what I'm hearing. In this particular situation, is 5,900 accounts that requires a pumping
And
station.
it's a different infrastructure.
Could be, but it's just metrics that,
The distance
Metrics.
that they're needing to get their water to, the further away you are, the more pressure you need to get it to a certain level. And then they have to maintain a minimum pressure for their system, fire protection and everything. So-
understood. But if Harrison Township's getting their water away from that spot too, right?
But you're surrounding it, and we have to pump all the way up.
Well, let me finish.
Yeah.
Is Harrison Township getting our water from that spot right there too?
Harrison Township gets their water from two different locations, not exactly there, no.
Where is it being tapped at?
It's kind of the north end and the south end, two different locations.
And I believe the north end is in the industrial corridor, is that correct?
I think so.
Has that location been looked at?
Yes.
Like we did look at that location. For instance, that pump station, you guys take pressure off of the main, knock it down to 58 PSI. We ran through our model that has all the different conditions of the pipe and size of the pipe and where the demand is at in the system. We would need to boost that more than 80 PSI to be able to push the water to Mount Clemens, to be able to satisfy our demand. That's, I think, what he was getting at is we would.
Again, we used the word arteries earlier, you know, so those are our two biggest mains. Are those coming down? So, may I again?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Yeah. Your connection is somewhere up here. We looked if we can connect to GLWA up here, but these mains that we have are here very small, so we can't use these mains. These can't be our arteries to bring all the flow and feed everything. These are our two biggest pipes, so we would have to replace a lot of water mains here to reconvey, to be able to connect here to feed everything. So we looked at it, it just doesn't work because of the way the system was built from the beginning. These are our main arteries, that's the connection point.
You're still replacing main though through
Yep.
Crocker though.
Yeah.
So
but
it's not like it's
infrastructure-
absent main replacement. It's just now gonna be a conversation about how much of it
To here, but then it's also set up to expand.
from that
Right.
point,
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
In the floor plan drawing, it shows a future fourth pump. Not that I don't know what a future pump is all about, but if you've done all your engineering, why do you anticipate a future fourth pump?
In
'Cause I did see also, you've already got, you're running one pump continuous, another one you're cycling, another one is sitting for redundancy, and now there's another fourth one for,
So in our world, our assets are meant to last 50-plus years. 100 years is a typical design life, like you're trying to plan way out. Who knows what communities we might serve next door? And we're talking about making the building 10 feet longer to accommodate a future pump. So, and we're always required to have firm capacity. That term means with one unit off service, you can still meet your worst demand. That's why we're having three, is on a normal day, two would run and you'd have one be a common standby.
right,
The fourth, we don't need it right now, but we said, let's make the building 10 feet longer so that if any needs grow in the community, we could put that fourth one in. If that is a concern and we could shrink the building down a little bit, then I think that's a discussion point. But we try to build in room to easily expand if ever needed.
fair. I mean, it's a fair answer. I was poking at it maybe a little bit deeper, because when I was reviewing this was showing that over the past 10 years, and this is the information right in here, so I didn't have to make it up, that average demand was decreasing. So like, I could have convinced myself a potential because the chart was showing average demand increasing, and you're designing for today, and with the trend of it increasing, let's have a future fourth, but the trend is actually showing that the likelihood of a fourth, based upon the facts, is probably not there. I'll just stop at that. You've already said that we could talk about what that may or may not mean as part of conversation. The drawings do not indicate the finished floor elevation of the pump house basement. I couldn't see a dimension of how deep that basement is.
So right now, the ground floor would be 590
Yep.
is the elevation, and the base slab would be 580, the floor of the basement. So we're 10 feet
10
from
feet.
floor to floor.
How tall are these proposed pumps?
They'll sit on an equipment pad about 8 inches tall, and they might be 3 feet tall tops to the air release valve on the top, so waist height. They're horizontal split case pumps is the style we're proposing to use.
So the point of my question there is, and this is going to drive back to a lot of the conversation that we're going to end up with at some point in time, is, and you started to address it relative to height of buildings, look and everything. So what I'm poking at here, there was a ceiling height that got dictated for some criteria. I'm not sure what it was. And I was just wondering, which it sounds like there's quite a bit of ceiling height in there. 'Cause I don't have the drawing in front of me right now, but I was just wondering, is there opportunity to reduce ceiling height in order to just reduce the overall impact?
To shrink
look
the,
of the-
to
of
shrink the
building.
building down?
Yes.
So what we have, what's driving the height right now is we have the pumps lined up in a row, and then we have a monorail crane that runs above those. We also have 2 large pressure reducing valves. And so all of the heaviest components with our building are directly under that monorail. What's driving it is the monorail, the hook height, the rigging, and to be able to pick a pump up and move it over top of the next one. So we have 6 inches of sort of extra height in the building for rigging. It could
Got
come
it.
down a small amount, but not a lot with the design that's in there now.
The,
We also used a 412 pitch instead of a 512 to try to keep the peak
Right.
height lower.
noted. The precast core walls at the tank. The drawings just call them out as precast. The illustrations you put up here are still depicted as precast. Have you considered any other options that it doesn't have to look like precast?
You can do additional aesthetic features on the side of a precast tank. The reason we like that more is you pour all those panels and then you put them all in compression. They're a very robust tank that is proven to be leak-free, not a guarantee, but less likelihood of leaking. Whereas in a traditional cast-in-place concrete tank, you can sometimes get more shrinkage cracks and then have weeping and issues with the longevity of the tank. This tank is a more robust tank. It's a delegated design, meaning that there's a manufacturer that specializes in this. They just go around the country building this style of tank. So our drawings won't list out every last piece of rebar and size and thickness. We'll list some criteria that the tank needs to provide, and then it's their responsibility to design the tank, sort of the nuance of the tank. There's a AWWA standard they need to design it by.
I read, I think it was documentation we received about the requirement that Macomb County Department of Roads has to commit funding in order to restore the roads. Did I not read that within our stuff?
That might have been the extra documentation that was provided.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I read that. Which makes sense anyway, so I'll just stop with it. I mean, if you're gonna be going through Crocker's gonna get chewed up pretty good. Someone has to pay to restore it.
We will, part of this project, yeah. It is, the road belongs to the Department of Roads, obviously.
Yes, it does.
Yep, so we've been talking to them, we'll need a permit for them to build the water mains in the road, and as part of that is we will repave the road. Repave the portions that we excavate, yep.
Gotcha. So you did, can you go back to the new elevation the amended elevation for the pump house that you've just presented? Yes. Fair. I'm going to trust everybody, at least on that side. Have you seen the Rio Vista pump station in the past? No?
Vista Pump Station on Jefferson?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So are you aware that that pump station was designed completely to look like a house? 100% house?
Yep, yes, quite aware, yeah. And that's on the main road, right? So, but
On
yes.
Jefferson?
Yep.
In fact, I believe we have a rendering, picture of
Yeah.
that. Can we pull that up, please? I think we have a couple of.
So I bring it up because, at least for me
I've been in
personally,
that facility
that
quite a
becomes
bit.
my definition of what a residential solution to this becomes. And I just want to show you the image for everybody to see.
Yeah, we're not, I mean, I've seen pictures of it as well. We can add additional features.
Even has Christmas lights on it right now.
That's right, it's even decked out for the holidays.
So this is a pump station that, I gotta tell you, for years, I drove down Jefferson and didn't figure it out until one day, I was like, that's pretty interesting. And I actually got out and looked at it, I said, oh, that's a wild solution for a pump station.
Yeah, that's a great solution.
It's a great solution. So, I'm just saying that, I mean, I saw that you made an attempt to go, at least as far as I'm concerned, the attempt has to go, it's gotta go a lot farther. And, I mean, this, and I'm not making anything up, this is right down the street from us.
Yeah.
This is
There,
real.
even the other one on Jefferson, the Hoffman pump station,
So,
looks more like a house than, and it has a sign on it that says pump
For,
station.
I designed the Hoffman.
Okay.
For full
Gotcha.
disclosure. So yes, I'm quite aware of the Hoffman. And this.
All right, well then, that's like my techno stuff. I'll hold up on some of my other stuff because, as far as I'm concerned, this has to be, this has to be part of whatever comes in front of me before I can even start to. And we still haven't solved the tank. And I still haven't been convinced that you have exhausted every option for the tanks. But that's just me.
I guess I would mention the need for the above-ground storage. So in the past, many municipalities would have below-ground finished water storage, meaning potable water. The state will not allow us to put finished water below ground anymore.
Right.
They're worried about contamination of groundwater, so that does force us to have ground storage. We'd love to be able to bury some of this tank to make it less obvious, but we would not be able to get a permit state to do that.
But don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting you do an elevated tank in Harrison Township. I don't think you misunderstood that at all.
We didn't expect that we
No.
would get even
No,
this
but
far.
I still think an elevated tank in Mount Clemens would like really make this thing make some reasonable sense, but enough to that.
Okay, any other, yes, sir, please.
So
Yeah.
I would like, I've been struggling this, I've been looking over the plans, I understand your situation, but, planning commission is governed by ordinance and law, and I gotta tell you, what I'm struggling with is, because this is a special land use, there's 8 standards that must, and it's very clear that we must find affirmatively to each of the following standards, so each of the 8 standards must be met in order for a land use, special land use to be approved. When I look at the 8 standards, and I'm not going to go through them, I can, but I out of the 8, I have 7, 6 of them circled. The ones I have circled, by no mistake, clearly does not meet the 8 standards. So when I look at this from a purely planning and, from a legal point of view, from the standards we've created, tied to our master plan and everything that we use throughout the township, I understand your dilemma, but I really struggle with this because I must abide by these standards. And so must everyone up here. So I just want to make that very clear, because if I look at this right now, it just doesn't make sense. So that's all I had to say.
And did you want to mention the standard that you felt was not compliant?
Well,
Or,
I mean, I can go through, I don't know if people are familiar, I can sort of summarize. So basically,
Public hearing.
the other option is to open up to allow the public
we
to come up, but
can.
they might benefit from.
yeah, okay, and I can
If you,
share.
if you
I can
just want,
share- I'll
if you just want to
summarize.
address the ones that you
Yeah.
feel for sure do not meet the requirement, that would
So,
be.
right, so basically it says that The location, size, and character will be in harmony with the appropriately orderly development of the surrounding neighborhoods, zoning districts. The proposed use shall be designed on location, size, intensity, site layout, and periods of operation of any such proposed use to eliminate any possible nuisance emanating from which might be noxious to the occupants other than nearby permitted uses by reason of dust, noise, fumes, vibration, smoke, or lights. The proposed site shall be such that the location and height of the buildings or structures and locations, nature of the heights and walls, fences, landscape will not interfere or discourage the appropriate development, use of adjacent land and buildings or unreasonably affect their value. The proposed use shall relate harmoniously with physical and economical adjacent aspects of the land. The proposed use will serve a public convenience at the proposed location, so it will for Mount Clemens, but not for Harrison Township. The proposed use shall not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the vicinity, which is to be located, and not to be a detriment to existing or other permitted land uses in the zoning district. And I see every picture I see, there's residential areas surrounding this. So, I mean, so anyway, again, when I go by, what I took an oath to enforce, to me, it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense. That's just me. There's other folks up here.
Well, and the seven of us, we all took that same, and we follow these standards. I mean, we follow these rules. These are our rules, like every other law and rule and ordinance there is. These are what we are bound by. This is what we live with. We don't make these decisions because we like it or don't like it. This is why. And I agree with you, Larry. I had a couple of those same standards highlighted. Okay, if we, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, we did try to answer those 8. I think we did do an attachment to our, in an attempt,
No, I do,
answered
yeah.
or not is
I
we
do.
did try.
I do have your
Yes,
answers, yes. Let me just ask this, because I think that this question is going to come up, and I'm just going to get it right out of the way. What does Harrison Township get from this? What benefit to Harrison Township is there to place this structure at that location?
To be honest, neither a benefit nor a harm. Your water rates won't change. This doesn't improve the pressure in the water system. To be, all fair.
Well, we want honesty, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't benefit or, we believe, harm. We're just asking to use that property.
Madam Chair, can I just say one thing to that question?
Yes.
This isn't necessarily,
Can you pull your microphone down, please, so we can hear you?
yeah, I'm just saying, legally with that question, what does Harrison Township get? This is Harrison Township's ability to plan for its township. It has provided in its zoning ordinance what is allowed in each zoning district. A public facility is allowed in this zoning district, but it can only be allowed through special land use approval. So they have to meet the standards, and it's an opportunity for you to look at their reasons that they supported for the special land use. And if you find that there's certain conditions that would make it more palatable to be located at this site, because by ordinance itself, it is allowed if it meets the standards. So it's not a matter of what are we getting, it's how are you going to uphold your ordinance?
Okay, there you go, yeah. And so I rephrased it poorly, but I have a feeling that question was going to arise, if not from this board, from this body. So.
Right, so it isn't a matter of that, it's how are we maintaining our zoning ordinance, which we did provide for public facilities. All municipalities have the zoning ordinance that either allow for, apparently in Clinton Township, they completely ousted the whole idea, but, municipalities zone and allow certain uses in particular zones and how they will be approved or not approved.
Thank you.
What are those generally intended for your own townships?
Correct. Yep, tailored to your township. Or
And that's a key phrase right there, yeah. tailored to our township.
I will just mention that because Supervisor Verkest mentioned it at our meeting, your storage tank is located on county property. Nope, isn't, but it is located on county property.
So just a question, have you looked at that property as well? I mean, there's a lot of room over there, and to me, when I first saw this proposal, I sort of thought, before I looked into it deeper, okay, maybe it's going there. And, it was interesting, but I
The
guess.
one on the spillway? Yeah. You wanna put another one there?
I'm not really sure where that.
I guess that's my question, so, have you looked at that, have you looked
Can
at
it
that
look like
property?
the Rio Vista there?
I think yours is on the other side of the river. I think, right? Yeah, I
can
think
point
it's
it
right
out.
down there.
It's on the spillway.
Yeah, it's down here. Yep, sorry, under the shadow of it, yep.
In the negative of down there would be we'd be further away from that valve we've been talking about,
I understand.
the reason.
So that was, I had a couple questions I thought you could probably answer pretty quick. One of you already answered about the type of tank, because if it was hidden, I mean, it would basically disappear in the site, but you answered that it can't be below ground. You keep mentioning the valve. Is this the only valve from Port Huron to Detroit? Or are there other valves? Where are they located? And does it require, you talk about making two connections for redundancy, one on each side of the valve. Is that a requirement? Or is that just, in case you have a problem and you need to connect to the other side?
I mean, this will be the sole connection for Mount Clemens, so we really don't want to have only one option. We need to have two options for redundancy for the public water supply. We've looked at other connections around the periphery of Mount Clemens. None of them have enough capacity city in an emergency scenario, so we're going to need to tap that GLWA water main twice. The added benefit is like the 120-inch break that happened recently. That 42-inch valve was used to help control pressures.
So
It's a critical valve.
Where are the similar valves like this? Where are the next closest ones?
There's none that are anywhere close to Mount Clemens.
Are there other communities that only have one connection and don't have the redundancy in the Great Lakes Water Authority?
How many
Honestly.
customers?
Yeah, there's like 97 customers, so there may be some
Understood.
really small communities, but you guys have two connections for the same reason.
Harrison
One
Township
owner-
has
Yeah,
two.
for the exact same reason.
They're on either side of the valve, they just happen to be further apart.
I understand the valve falls right in Harrison
Yeah.
Township, so I mean, why wouldn't you? But are there other communities that have further connections away similar to Mount Clemens that don't, aren't able to make two connections?
Not big ones that I know of. So I can't speak for sure, but all your neighbors have multiple connections.
Can we let the public come up and ask their questions? So I'm going to ask you to take your seats and get your notepads out. Commissioners, do the same. So if you have something that we have not brought up, I know you're not going to want to hear this, but I'm going to say it. If you can try and keep the emotion out of it, please limit it to 3 minutes. I'm going to keep you to 3 minutes because it is 20 to 10. I'm sorry, say that again, please?
Can you want to let them know about the on-deck chairs?
Oh, yes, the on-deck chair, thank you. Yes, so you can come up to the podium, let us know who you are and your address. Stick to 3 minutes, and then the next person can take the chair behind the
No,
podium
it's
to
already
prop.
been open at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's
They get-
been open.
I'm
You
sorry?
get to speak one time and no share.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. You only get to speak one time, and I'll just reiterate that if something's been mentioned before, no need to mention it again.
And this is not a back and forth.
Right,
This-
this is just, yes, thank you, that's, yes, and please keep us all to that. Okay, I'm hitting start after you say your name.
Hi, my name is Cecilia Menino. I live on Chancel, and the property you're discussing runs all along the side of my backyard. From what I can see by the renderings of the pump station and the water storage, it will be placed very close to my house. At the previous informational meeting, there was talk about fencing and landscaping, and that is what I would like to address. I can't remember if they talked about an 8-foot-high or a 6-foot-high chain link fence that surrounds this whole development. That's going to make it look like it's a prison. There has to be, if you're going to approve this, there has to be better fencing. The landscaping that was shown in the renderings is minimal. There has to be some way of disguising or covering up that storage tank. Arborvitae, large Christmas trees, whatever you call them, pine trees, because what was discussed was that the tank was 30 feet high, but the trees were 60 feet high. But these are leafy trees. In the winter, that tank is going to stick out like a sore thumb. What I propose is that before you go forward, a landscape architect be hired and submit drawings. Because if you're talking about blending in with the neighborhood, what is being proposed right now, is not blending in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you ready?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, please
No,
go ahead.
I just want to make sure I don't go over my 3
Yep,
minutes.
you're good, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Kyle Nurjanakis. I live at 24655 Regal Place in Harrison Township. I own 2 homes in this township, and I've lived here for 20 years. I am here to speak out in strong opposition to this plan to build a large water tank in the middle of a neighborhood filled with high-value homes. I understand that it looks like the perfect location for this project, and maybe it is by some metrics, but when evaluating this location as, quote, the perfect location for this tank, you ignored the fact that it's right in the middle, and I don't mean you personally, but it was ignored that it was right in the middle of a residential neighborhood. So really, the thinking needs to change that this would be an ideal location, except for the fact that it's a residential neighborhood, and there are already people living here, right? Therefore, it is not an ideal location. This is not an ideal location for this, because our residential neighborhoods are protected by ordinances that we, the residents, ultimately select through our representatives. I understand that there are some arguments being made saying that this doesn't violate the ordinances, but we all know that all reasonable people without a personal motive would say that building this giant tank that will be visible from all of our backyards is a detrimental impact to all of us. None of you would say that you would be okay with a large tank in your backyard, complete with lights and noise and years-long construction, again, right in your backyard. And since none of you would say that, that means demand for our house will go down. Basic economics teaches us that demand drives pricing, therefore our home values will decrease. This cannot be argued. We even have industry professionals willing to testify to that fact. This is easy to understand. And it's just one of the ordinances that it violates. This is clearly not in the character with the surrounding neighborhood, and that is also a requirement of our ordinances. I'm sorry. I understand that some may think this is an ideal location, but it is protected by these ordinances. We are protected by these ordinances. This is the very reason that they are written, so that no matter who sits in these seats today, the residents of the community are protected. None of you would be accepting of a plan like this in your backyard. As I see it, you are required to vote against this as the ordinances are clearly violated. I believe that it was Spock who said that logic dictated that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one, before, spoiler alert, dying heroically to save the many. But Spock sacrificed his needs voluntarily. We do not. And forcing involuntary harm onto the few for the needs of the many is wrong, even immoral. I believe Spock would even call it illogical. We are not looking to be heroes, only to enjoy the property that we have bought in the community in which we have chosen to live. Uphold the ordinances and grant us these protections, please. Deny the special land use request. It is only logical. Thank you.
Thank you.
Michael Dozier, 24994 Crocker Boulevard, Harrison Township, Michigan. I'm calling and opposing this special land use. I saw the updated drawings from what, I saw Friday night to today. They put the tank closer to my house. If I had a little wind on my back, I could spit on that tank. And to me, there is a wetland there. It's a natural shed of water. That wetland, I see the drawings, you got grass and things there. It's no longer going to be able to absorb that water like it does now. And where does it go? It goes in my garage, in my back door, and on my property. And this special land use is about as welcome to me as head lice. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Judy Rasticue. I live at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Can you please pull the microphone down? Thank you so much.
I'm not used to speaking.
No, you're good. Thank you.
My home is on the cul-de-sac of Regal Place. It abuts the property that Mount Clemens wants to use. Before we could build a home on that property, we had to sign a document that had requirements of the size of the home, what could be put on, the materials of building of the home. The garages had to be put on the side, not facing the street. There were many restrictions we had to sign before we could build. This was in 1977. We moved into our home in 1980, so I've been there over 43 years. We had restrictions. We were told that the property abutted wetlands and was landlocked for single homes. Now this is going to change everything. I would like to invite you to my property, which has been extensively landscaped. We even got an award from Harrison Township, beautification award for our property. I would like you to stand and see how the little tags that are around the perimeter and how you can just make one step and be on that property. I have an angled property. So there is a section of it that abuts it within feet. Trees will not hide this. With the destruction that it's going to be caused, it'll create a mud bath for how many years? And then the trees that will grow there, I'll never live to see the height of those trees that would transfer or, what do I want to say? I'm losing the words. But anyway, I'm opposed to this. I invite you to my property, walk in my backyard, and see what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to come up and speak? Mr. Senstack.
Ready? Jim Senstock.
Oh, ready, yes.
I don't live in this area. I live in Harrison Township. And I heard the argument made just a few minutes ago that the ordinance allows public service properties in Harrison Township. Those are Harrison Township public service properties, not Mount Clemens public service properties. In addition, Mount Clemens stated at our meeting, which I also attended, actually our supervisor advised us that, thank you, our supervisor, Harrison Township supervisor, advised us that if Mount Clemens wants to put it anywhere they want in Mount Clemens, they can do it, and they can do it with eminent domain. Just like if Harrison wanted to put it there, they could do it without really coming to the planning commission, other than to meet these criteria, which we know they would. I looked at the master plan, and the master plan is pretty good. The purpose of the master plan, as defined in the visions and strategies, is to promote the public interest of the township at large rather than the interests of individuals, developer, the guy selling it, or special groups, the Mount Clemens water people. Further down in the old overall concept about the planning commission, and this is on page 6.14, generally speaking, the township land use concept involves residential infill at densities consistent with the overall pattern surrounding the area, the residents. commercial areas, which I regard this as a commercial area or public service, you can call it whatever you want, will be consolidated to where they are currently exist. In other words, go put it in the industrial corridor or something like that, and maybe we can pass it. My last comment is that I understand Larry had five things he said disagreed with or whatever, or under the planning thing. I also say that it does not meet item 7, which is the proposed use is so designated, located, planned, and operated so that the public health, safety, and it says welfare, but I say general welfare, should be protected. This property currently had an assessment, has an assessment of over $339,000. The guy that's selling it, selling it for 1.2 million. So, you know what? And where's our tax revenue gonna be when they put a non-taxable entity sitting on this property? We could get 4 or maybe 5 houses on that particular site, maybe not quite so many, but guess what? We're losing $1 million in taxable assessment every year.
Thank you, Mr. Sunstein.
C. William Bardell, 26-year resident. I don't live in the area, but I took a look at it. At first, when I heard about Mount Clemens wanting a water tank, I thought, oh, okay, it's going to be on the other side of the street in Clinton Township or Mount Clemens in their own neighborhood. And then I looked at the agenda today, and then I looked up the site, just about fell over and hit my head. And I looked at the homes in the area, and I felt so bad for these people. I'm thinking they're going to hear a humming noise 24/7. This is a terrible spot to put this tank. It's just terrible. You know, pumps, they hum all day. The tank, it's residential. I mean, this is a no-brainer. I mean, it's sad, you know. Yeah, in a perfect world, you got 2 tie-ins right there. Yeah, you could do 1 hot tap or whatever, blah, 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 easy breezy. But if you put people first and you think about people, what your job is, and the residents of the township, and with your oath of office, it would be, it's about these residents here and about these people here and their homes and their life and their quality of life, and this is a terrible spot for it. Again, I thought it would be somewhere on the other side of the street in Clinton Township or Mount Clemens. I had no idea it's going to be in the middle of a subdivision. That's just ridiculous. Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Bardell. Oh, I'm sorry.
My name is Brooke Lalonde. I live at 24994 Crocker Boulevard. My house is visible in many of the pictures that were shown today of the water tower. I'm directly next to it. Not only do I fear for the noise, even if it is reduced, that I would potentially hear through my window at night, but I also fear for the animals. My whole backyard, year-round, is covered in deer. There are deer, squirrels, groundhogs. I fear as if they are not being held into account with this. As well as their homes being demolished, I also fear that their homes being flattened will affect my basement as well, as the water level will be dissipated and not be at the current level that it is. So I ask you to consider, not only for the future residents of Mount Clemens, but for the future animals of the world, what this could potentially be doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Ed DeLugie. I live on Crocker, down the street from this project. Well, I listened to all this whole presentation and that. Mount Clemens explaining. Sounds to me, basically, they got a money problem. They ain't got enough money to do the job properly. So now what are they doing? They're coming to their neighbor to ask him to bail them out. I say no, I'm opposed. There's plenty of solutions. They have a master plan, you can pull it up on the internet. There's got 4 scenarios there. They can do them all, but it sounds like they just don't have the money. So, and they got decreasing population. They published the data. So I'm opposed to it. I don't think that we should be bailing them out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Something that hasn't been brought up already?
Madam Chair, Board, my name is Burton Foreman. I live at 24849 Crocker Boulevard. I'm kitty corner from this property. I think one of the sections in our ordinances that we're missing, I know it's public utility, but there's also a section about bulk storage and flames and raw materials. Water is raw material. This is a raw material bulk storage. And in that ordinance, it says that all such use shall be located on a parcel of land which is surrounded, abutted land zoned industrial. None of these homes are zoned industrial. This is all zoned R1A, residential. You can put makeup on a pig, but it's still a pig. This is a terrible idea. I'm in government. I know how government works. All this, it was a miracle the stars aligned. That's BS. They were at the golf course many times trying to get that property, not just once, not just twice, trying to strong arm that property. That fell through. Then they're gonna miraculously find this, and that resident miraculously demolished the house and started trimming the whole land miraculously. I mean, come on, I don't buy it. As you already stated, they already had a master plan before all of this that said the stuff was in Mount Clemens. I get being a good neighbor. I understand that. The mayor, you said you want to be a good neighbor. Build this in your backyard. Build this across the street from you. You have a Macomb Daily building that's been vacant for 20, 30 years in Mount Clemens. Build a tower there. There's plenty of property. The reason that our storage is, as you so said, on county property, it's on the spillway. It holds 2 million gallons of water. If that ruptured, it goes in the spillway. This ruptures, yeah, the Titanic never sank, right? This ruptures, 2 million gallons of water. There's an overpass right there. Imagine what it's going to do to that overpass in 94. Imagine what it's going to do to the homes. That wetland, that little piece that they have that's supposedly going to hold the water, roughly, you would need 2 football fields 10 foot deep to hold 2 million gallons of water if that thing ruptured. It's if it ruptured. I don't think it would, right? But we got to go on if it did. And the fact in their paperwork that it said it should not affect the values adjacent properties, come on. That's like saying the freeway doesn't affect my property. It does. That's like saying Kiwani's golf course doesn't affect my property. It does in 2 different ways. The golf course affects it positively. Freeway affects it negatively. This monstrosity, this is going to affect it negatively as hell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening. My name's Ed Seiler. I do not currently live at 24872 Crocker, but however, my parents do. I live right down the street. As far as the gentleman brought up the miracle is their city planner grew up at 24872 Crocker. He's very familiar with this area, class of 1985 of our own high school. So there's no possible way he did not know that property's there. So people, when you start misleading people and being deceptive, you have to dig a little bit deeper, pull back that onion, and understand where this information is coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come up.
My name's Deborah Pocius, and I live at 24925 St. Paul Boulevard. My whole home rides along I-94. Okay? Next to my home is the home of Mike Dozier. Next to that is the property that was supposedly sold. But the big black line, the one where the zone R1 is, all them woods are my woods. If anything happens to that property because of this water, I already am saturated from everyone in all the other cul-de-sacs. Their water is running so it can get to the drain out of the Clinton River, which is right where I am. So I'm asking you, please, I've had so many issues with this already, and I already deal with all the noise of 94. And if you put this in over here, you are going to make the value of my home even worse. And my husband would not appreciate it. So I hope that you guys understand what you really are trying to do. And I understand you need to take care of all of your citizens, but you need to take care of all your citizens and understand the ones that have built a life for 30-some years at their homes. So please, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Mark Streck. I live at 25240 Crocker Boulevard. I was born in the house my dad built there, and when they moved to Florida, I bought it from him. I was to raise my family there. And one of my main concerns, if I can...
Yeah, please. Just remember to project your voice if you're going to speak from here.
So I'm right here. As she just stated, she lives here, and her yard floods. Well, there's a culvert right here that runs under 94 to drain this whole area into my backyard. And I can show you guys pictures from a rain where it's almost up to my house. So I'm an attorney. Type of law I do, it's basically helping people plan for the worst, right? I don't think we've put enough emphasis on what if there is a leak? What if this does break? It's lives. The renderings, I think those are very misleading. I have a 2-story house, and can you go to those renderings? From Crocker. It's going to be much higher than that if you're standing on Crocker. That's extremely misleading. Okay? I think the rest of the residents have really hit on all the points. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? Something that hasn't been touched on yet?
If you could put up the other visual that shows the neighborhood.
And if you could pull the microphone up a little bit, please? Thank you.
State your name and address.
Hi, my name is Ellen Beck. I live at 24685 Regal Place. And my husband and I own the property that's just southwest and shares much of that southwest border with the Crocker property. We're at the very end, or toward the end of the cul-de-sac there. And the proposed placement of the detention pool is right in that southwest corner of the property, which, if that goes there, then they take down all the trees there that we enjoy from our backyard. And that ugliness is what we would then look at when we look out our back windows of our house. All of my neighbors who submitted written comments or spoke here tonight, as well as some of the members of the Planning Commission, have brought up some really valid concerns, issues, and objections in regard to Mount Clemens' proposed plan, because it affects all of us in negative ways. I'd like to point out that although it's good and neighborly for government officials of any community to be considerate and cooperative of the needs of surrounding cities and townships, it is still their primary duty to serve and give greater consideration toward their own residents and homeowners. I would think everyone understands that Harrison Township Planning Commission's primary obligation is to Harrison Township, with the duty to consider how any project would impact our residents and homeowners while making decisions based on the zoning ordinances, including the special land use standards that are in place to help protect the best interests of our residents. We trust you to give careful consideration to these matters.
Although I appreciate that Fishbeck and Mount Clemens Planning Commission has put a lot of thought and effort into minimizing the negative impact to the surrounding neighborhood and in their proposed plans, as they tried to address the 8 standards for special land use, their plan certainly does not eliminate all the negative impact. I'm sure all of my neighbors can agree that those measures are not sufficient. Based on many of my neighbors' statements, it's clear that the negative impact to the surrounding neighborhood is unacceptable, and that at least 3 of the 8 standards would not be sufficiently met. We're trusting each member of the Planning Commission to carefully and seriously consider our concerns and objections and the negative impact that Mount Clemens' proposed plan would have on the homeowners of all the adjacent properties and the surrounding neighborhood, to look out for our best interests as property tax-paying homeowners of Harrison Township. On behalf of my neighbors, we respectfully, strongly urge the members of the Planning Commission to deny the request from Mount Clemens, because that is what's in the best interest of multiple Harrison Township homeowners. Thank you.
Thank you. If no other residents want to come up and speak, I think we'd like to close the public hearing. Last chance. Motion to, seeing no additional residents want to speak, motion to close the public hearing, please.
Madam Chair, do you want to offer an opportunity for the petitioner
Uh,
to respond?
Yes, but after the public hearing is closed, because they won't be able to address anything additional past that. So motion to close the public hearing, please.
So moved.
Mr. Tominello, supported by Mr. Batcha?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Would the applicants, the City of Mount Clemens, like to come up and address any of the items that were mentioned?
I would just like to thank you again for the opportunity to come to the Planning Commission, and I know that we are going to take this feedback back, and we'll be in touch with the township officials, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's, okay, so answers are forthcoming then, is essentially what you're saying? Okay, all right. Okay, commissioners, back to you. We have our public hearing. We have our list of questions. Mount Clemens has taken those list of questions, and they're going to provide their answers at a later date to the township at the next Planning Commission meeting. What can we expect? Sorry, I should have got you while you were up there.
In terms of direct questions from citizens, we have things written down, but I don't know that there are direct questions written down. I mean, really for us. I mean, we answered all of the township, the commission questions. There were a lot of statements. There weren't a lot of questions.
There were a lot of statements,
So
correct.
I guess if you have some specific questions, then we are absolutely available to answer those, but there weren't very many questions. in
The
all
very
of those.
first question that was presented was regarding fencing and landscaping. And I know we talked about landscaping early on, but could you expand on or clarify what type of fencing is planned and what type of
Screening.
additional landscaping is going to be provided for screening?
So the renderings that we have out there now show an 8-foot tall chain link fence. It was a initial suggestion. We needed to secure the site, so we were showing one within a small area. We had mentioned in the public meeting, we were open to providing additional screening fencing at strategic areas. We didn't show those in these areas, but we're able to offer that up. The renderings that we show, we didn't want to depict trees that were 50-year-old trees, try to mislead you guys. I know there were people that I agree mentioned that they may not be around long enough to see the vegetation grow long enough to screen the tank. I'm not going to stand here and argue that. These trees are showing what it would look like at the end of construction, some 20-year period. We can offer to plant more trees, but we're not going to be able to plant 60-foot tall trees, obviously. Not sure that there's anything we can do to address the statement that was made on that.
Yeah, but we are open. I mean, if there's specific suggestions on privacy fence that you would like to see, we're open to that. Just give us, some direction. If you want privacy walls in certain areas, more, we can, as we said, we can plant more trees. They're just not going to be big trees. But we're willing to add more landscaping if that's needed, sure. If you can give us some direction of what you would like, we'll definitely consider it, sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I think that was it, honestly.
Wasn't there something about the design of the pump station?
Well, we brought that up, and we indicated that we absolutely would want to see a more home structure versus a utility structure, and I think we talked about that earlier.
We can look into.
Drainage is a common issue brought up by a few of the residents. Currently, some of the surrounding properties have issues today, and culverts can't handle. How is Mount Clemens going to handle drainage that may be used by this piece of property once these structures are in place?
Yeah, so there's a detention pond designed on site to meet the county standards. It'll hold runoff from every, area that is disturbed with this project. All that water will run to that detention pond and then through a culvert outlet, which runs into Regal Place, kind of the southwest of the site. But that outfall will be metered per county standards. So that pond will not be full of water. It'll hold water. I think it's designed for 48-hour retention during a storm event. Obviously, the wetland areas are not going to be touched, so that flow and water will all remain the same. It sounds like it mostly flows towards I-94, but anything within that black line will be directed towards that detention pond.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything else that?
How many, you mentioned earlier, 90 people from Harrison Township. How many people is the system serving in Clinton Township? I know 5,900 total, approximately.
Clinton Township has water mains that connect to the system on Charbonneau Street, Albert Place, and Ormsby up by Harper. And then also the kind of south on Harper, there's more water main. It's a few hundred. I don't know the exact number. We can get it for you.
So approximately 200 or 300 people, so if we were putting a
Yeah, and
number on it.
it's water mains where the Harrison Township is more direct connections with service lines directly to houses. This is 8-inch water mains and 6-inch water mains fed off of the system, serving houses down those streets.
And then with, obviously, we've talked a lot about the system and where it's going to go. If we're not in the affirmative tonight, what is the fallback plan that Mount Clemens has? I know money's a consideration, but there's got to be something.
We don't know. To be honest, we don't know. We have to think about it seriously. We're running out of time. We have to go out to bid in May, so if this isn't, we got to go talk to the state about Plan B.
Did they say how many Clinton Township residents?
Their mains, not directly. We can get you the exact number of Clinton Township you need that. It's few hundred, we just don't know if it's 200 or 400, something like that.
So one question that I heard brought up was the actual noise from the unit. So maybe you could address what level of noise that would actually be? Because it seems to me that if there's maintenance and that means a crew coming in, you said every 2 weeks, potentially walking around. So that could be potentially less noise than a couple of houses with teenagers or, so it just seems to me that that might not be a bad neighbor if the sound could be ameliorated and the screening, it could be properly screened, and it could, the character of the construction could be such that it is more of a residential nature. And this happens everywhere, where these types of utilities, which are necessary to every community, they are screened to fit in and not stand out.
As far as the noise, like, the tank will not make any noise, filling, drawing, that there's no rushing water noise that would be generated. This tank slowly fills over a period of 6 to 10 hours, slow-moving water. The things that would be running are the fans that are conditioning the air. Like I said, we're putting those units inside the building. We're oversizing the louvers. We're putting silencers in the ducts so that we're minimizing any noise coming from the fans. The pumps, you would hear the pumps if you're in the building. We're purposely designing the building as a masonry building with insulation. The noise of the pumps, whether you may be able to hear them from the outside, I can't claim an exact decimal, but by far the loudest thing would be the generator when it runs for 30 minutes every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and the generator is automatic. People will not be coming in to flip the switch. It is on SCADA, so it will run.
I mean, this is not a manned station as well. There'll be SCADA, so supervisory control from remote. We'll be monitoring if the pumps are running, what the water levels are. So there's no Mount Clemens employee that's in this building unless there's alarms that notify them they need to come and check on something. So they may make some rounds every few days to check on the station and walk around, but it's not like there's a crew of people working at this site. It would be unmanned the vast majority of the time.
That just answered one of my questions. I was going to ask about the staffing and, what type of coming and going would go on at the property on a normal day, so.
They'll be able to control all the valves, control the pumps, turn them on and off, monitor all the levels. So everything that's going on the site, security-wise, door access would all be monitored remote. No one would there's no restroom or office or anything in this building. It's purely just for the pumps and pipes.
So we showed 2 other pump stations, the ones that looked very similar to houses that you wouldn't even know they were there. From the noise perspective, if someone went by those houses, or those pump stations, would this be similar in noise output to those? So they could have something physically to compare to, or would this be louder or quieter? What are your expectations?
I mean, the design of the one that they're mentioning, I think, is a precast concrete one. I can't say I didn't design that one. It would be no louder, but I'm not sure of the size of the pumps and the types of the VFDs and everything there. I mean, the tank is the tank. We can disguise the pump station and make it more look like a house, but you can't make the tank look like a house.
Yeah, and I know they've gotten creative with items like cell phone towers that look like trees. I mean, is there any more creative things that can be done with the tank to make it less visible?
Fake columns on them and make them look like brick, but it's still going to be 30 foot tall. I mean, and 114 feet diameter. We need the volume. So I'm not going to stand here and make you say, or try to lead you on that I can make a tank look like a beautiful architectural feature. We can add facade elements to try to make it look less like a tank, but it's still going to be that big.
Anything else?
Questions? Because I was gonna, commentary, and perhaps I'm wrong, it strikes me that with some of this dialogue, which is all positive relative to the process, this is leading down a path that we have to wait for the applicant to come back with answers. And now, I guess before you have to answer it, that's what it feels like to me, and maybe not.
Well, we gave them the answers. They didn't want to address the comments.
Right,
and
but
so-
then for
for answers to follow, I thought I heard was a statement. But my point to that is, when I review the 8 standards that are our obligation to follow, without getting into the specifics, I mean, the 8 are the 8, they're well documented and written. That is our obligation to ensure that all 8 are acceptable, not a portion, all 8 have to be deemed acceptable. I am personally of the opinion that there is no response, no disrespect, there's no response that could come back that is going to convince me that all 8 have been accepted. I mean, there are, the project in its own nature already dictates this is never going to satisfy the 8. So, yeah, I made the comment about dressing up the pump house to look like a house, but I think I conditioned it by saying this is an absolute minimum. I think I made a comment that like the tank is just wrong. The tank to me is like the biggest issue in my mind is that tank. Yeah, you can disguise the house but that tank sits there. I will never be persuaded that this will satisfy the 8 standards. So the point of my conversation is, I'm not sure it's necessary we need to delay this decision.
Well, in that case then, if there are no other comments or questions from the commissioners, and if the applicants don't have any additional information to provide or ask of us, then I would entertain a motion. But I will.
So,
I would just like to say that that's where those screening questions and some of the questions came from, was that there is an opportunity to try to come into compliance with the standards. So that's where the questions were coming from. And now that they've heard the feedback, is there an opportunity for them to do that?
I guess that would be, up to the applicant's decision. If they feel that they can provide you with more information or slight revisions that would help satisfy the 8 standards.
I mean, again, we can make the architectural of the building look more, absolutely. If, a brick wall instead of a fence helps, we'll add, a nice 8-foot tall brick wall. If that would comply.
So fair, that's a very fair commentary, but I think the applicants already responded to the inquiry. A tank is a tank is a tank is a
Right.
tank. You can't put lipstick on a tank. A tank
Won't
is a tank.
change,
I mean,
no
I
matter
think
the
we've
dressing.
heard
Right.
the response,
Size is the
in
size
my
is the
opinion.
size, yeah.
Is,
Agreed.
is this layout, the location of the buildings you're touching by, is based on the features of the property, are you stuck with that layout, or is there any other opportunities or anything different that you can do? Some of the features are extremely close to residential properties.
So the wetland spaces, we looked into whether we could build in those areas or disturb those areas. And we looked at the path of whether we could file a permit request and disturb those areas. That's a very long process that's gonna take longer than we have. And what we were advised by our own in-house experts was that if you have enough room on the site to not disturb the wetland, then you will be told, don't disturb the wetland. By Eagle. So we made the judgment that it wasn't worth going down the path of disturbing the wetland, because we're ultimately gonna be told, well, you have available square footage on the site to build it somewhere else, you have to do it there. So then we have a detention pond, we have to hold the stormwater, plus we wanna have a place for that, if there's a potential overflow for the tank, for it to safely go there rather than leave the site. So that pond is as big as it needs to be. It's where the 18-inch stormwater pipe is at, where the easement's at, so that locks it into that location. So really, the usable footprint is where we have the asset. We tried to maximize the setback, we're more than what the ordinances say, but we tried to squish everything together as tightly as we could, the land we had available for us.
I'd be happy to make a motion, but I wouldn't mind, we have to address the 8 standards, okay?
Yep, you're welcome to do that.
But I would like, as opposed to addressing them, by addressing, because I think the majority of them fail.
okay? So I wouldn't mind as a strategy for conserving time, is to address the ones that I believe might be okay, or maybe even the ones that argument can be made one way or the other, and just take that off the table and
That would
not
be
make
fine.
that part of it, and let's just deal with what we believe is, you can stand in front of and guarantee that
Mm-hmm.
it's defendable, and not get caught up with some of the ones
Sure.
that maybe are a little bit on the fringe.
Yeah, we
Is
can
that
address
fair?
it. Yeah, I think that's very fair.
So I am of the opinion that this project fails item 1 of the special standards. I'm not going to get into the articulation. I believe it's been articulated by way of the presentation, our questions, commentary by the residents. And I have been persuaded by all of the above that number 1 just flat out fails. And I don't think I need to debate that anymore, in my opinion. I believe number 2, I'm not sure number 2 is a risk. I could hear argument that it might be a risk, but I don't think traffic is going to be an issue with this, so fine, I'll take number 2 off the table. I don't think that's a risk to the township. Item number 3, again, for reasons similar to item 1, I think this project as presented, by way of applicant's presentation, our questions, answers, residents' questions, 3 will not satisfy the requirement. Item 4, for the similar logic that I've just addressed, I believe fails. Item 5, for similar logic that we've addressed, I believe fails. Item 6 is an interesting one. The term is public convenience. One of the residents made an interesting analogy that public convenience should be deemed public convenience for Harrison Township. It's an interesting argument, but I'd rather not even bring it as part of the motion because maybe that is debatable, right? Because we only need to find one. So why introduce something that could be debatable? So I would not say I would address 6 as a failure to satisfy. And again, with the similar logic, I could make an argument that perhaps item 7 may not be at risk. Again, you can hear arguments on both sides, but given that it puts us in this gray zone, why address it and turn it into a potential debate? And I believe number 8 does fail for all the reasons that were presented today, questions asked, presentation made by the applicant. So in summary, I will be making a motion to say that we're going to deny the special land use for this property. This is not the motion yet, I'm just saying where I'm going to go with it. And then what I'm going to say is we're going to deny it because it fails to meet standard 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 of the Harrison Township special land use requirements, is how I'm going to frame it. Okay? That being said, I'm going to make a motion to deny the special land use approval of the domestic water supply pump station and water storage tank located at 24960 Crocker, Harrison Township, 48045. Due to the findings of the Harrison Township Planning Commission at the December 21st, 2023 public hearing, that it was determined that items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 were not satisfied in order to accommodate the requirements of the standards associated with special land use in Harrison Township.
I'll support that.
Motion by Mr. Batchus, supported by Mr. Tominello, to deny the special land use for case number 31-23-SLU, City of Mount Clemens at 24960 Crocker Boulevard due to the findings of the Harrison Township Planning Commission public hearing that special land use standards 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 are not satisfied. Do I have that correct?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Discussion on the motion.
Yes, just, not that I disagree with any statements made with addressing the 8 standards of special land use, just that I feel that while this meeting has gone on for a while, we've never really rushed a decision. And normally with a case like this, we would table and give time to kind of digest everything, give the applicant a chance to come back with the comments they heard. Now, they haven't offered really any questions, which is a little unusual, but that's, I just don't want to feel like we are rushing. I think, like I said, I agree with your statements. So that's my only comment on the motion.
And I appreciate that, because I was kind of struggling with that in the beginning as well. We have always kind of set a practice of giving ourselves a little bit of time to mull everything over. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, but whatever the case is now, there's not going to be a resolve to standards 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8. I don't think, and I agree with Mr. Batch, I don't think there's anything that the city of Mount Clemens or the applicant, the engineering team can do to satisfy those 5 standards. And I even had 6 and 7 in there, so, just to comment. And so that's how I rectified that in my own head.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Can I-
ma'am.
You know how I'm a stickler about motions.
I'm sorry, say that?
You know I'm a stickler about motions.
No, this is good.
I believe that, Mr. Batcha, I understand what you're saying, that you're having all 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 are failing. I would appreciate it if you would put some factual findings. You just said, based on what was said here
Oh,
tonight.
yeah,
I
we
would
can do
put
that.
factual findings in your motion. Whatever, as an example, I'm just throwing one out there, that the height of the water tank does not harmoniously, is compatible in the neighborhood. You have to put some facts in there to support your reasons for denial. Whatever your factual findings may be. I know you
Well,
heard a
you're-
lot of them, but you need to put them in your motion because that's the official motion.
Okay.
So facts have to be supported.
While you're mulling that over, I would just like to say that I agree with Member Mulder in that in the past, we have allowed applicants an opportunity to address any deficiencies that were pointed out. So it seems like we're not treating this like we've treated other cases.
And I do believe if somebody wants to make a motion to table, that would take precedence over your motion on the table.
Well, so I guess that puts us back into discussion of the motion then.
Well, we're still in discussion of this
Yeah,
actual
so,
motion. that we
and I
have to
get
do
it, I know we've
something
done it in the past, but again, in my opinion, I have heard nothing today that suggests that anything that's gonna, even any answer to any question is gonna come back and that tank's gonna be moved.
And potential
I've not heard
answers.
that at one time ever mentioned, so there's nothing in my mind. They could come back and say they're gonna plant 50 million 80-foot tall evergreens. They could tell me that. They're not. That, as long as the tank's there, as far as I'm concerned, this fails. It just fails. I don't know how it could fail. That's my opinion. I mean, I get what we've done in the past, but, gosh, I mean, enough said. As long, the project just doesn't feel right, and once it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Well,
Period.
That's not legal.
and so, and because
Huh?
it's not really a feeling, we have
It's
to,
not
we have to
feeling, it's
address the
factual.
facts.
But I found the factual,
Yep,
the
and
5 standards
right.
get
No, so let's-
satisfied.
You have
Let's
to have
talk
the
about
facts that
that.
support how it doesn't meet
Yes.
that 5 standards.
All right.
You can list away.
So 1 being proposed use shall be of such location, size, and character that it'll be in harmony with
All
the
right, so what I'll
appropriate.
do then, I don't know how this modifies, let me finish then. What I'll do, let me at least verbalize what it is, and then I guess we can debate how we incorporate that into the motion itself. Is that fair?
That is fair.
Because I'm not sure I'm going to be prepared to, let's sit here and rewrite this whole thought process. So, for item 1,
Size.
Can
Well,
I
let me-
make a?
all right, well, if you got some
I
help,
was just gonna say, the tank seems to be the biggest issue, but we can't, so maybe focus on the characteristics of the tank that don't meet those, Because that can't be changed.
Because that can't be changed. I mean, they said they could address the fencing, the landscaping, but they themselves said they cannot dress that tank up in any fashion to make it look
All right, so for
not
item
like a
1,
tank.
I'm with you, good thought there. So for item 1, I find that it fails because
size and character of the tank is not in harmony with the appropriate and orderly development of the surrounding residential neighborhoods. Is that?
That's where I was going with
Yes.
it.
Okay.
And that could be your reason for all of them, I'm just saying.
Well, that's exactly what I'm
I
doing. I'm
think
gonna find the
that's our
right words for
reason
one and
for
apply
all
it to everything
of-
else. Right. So that would satisfy,
That would be better.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Thank you.
For item 3, I am in the opinion that the location, size, and site layout associated with the pump house will create a possible nuisance emanating therefrom due to noise, vibration, and lights, and therefore I find that item 3 fails. Okay, good. For item 4, I find that the proposed location and height of the tank does interfere or discourage with the appropriate development and use of adjacent land and buildings and will affect their value. For item 5, I find that the tank does not relate harmoniously with the physical and economic aspects of the adjacent residential land uses. And for item 8, I find that the project, tank and pump house, will cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the vicinity in which it is to be located.
I'll continue my support on your amendment.
Okay, hang tight. Okay. So the amended motion by Mr. Batcha, supported by Mr. Tominello, is to deny the special land use due to the findings of the Harrison Township Planning Commission public hearing, specifically stating that special land use standards 1, 3, 4, 5, and 8 are not satisfied. Can I say as stated, or do I?
Yeah,
Thank you.
Just say
As stated.
Sabrina will verbatim put that into your motion. Merry Christmas.
Discussion on that motion. Roll call, please, Ms. Soparka.
Member Batcha.
Yes.
Member Tominello.
Yes.
Member Devlin. Yes. Member Duncan.
Yes.
Member Mulder.
No.
Member Oparka. Yes. Chair Murray.
Yes. Thank you. Special land use is denied. Okay, as you exit, please be mindful, we're going to try and finish up our meeting pretty quickly here. So if you could keep your conversation to the vestibule and the parking lot.
Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Wait, everyone, before you leave, please take our master plan survey to help guide. There's flyers on the table. Please, 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 tell all your friends.
You need to kick.
Thank you.
That was inappropriate.
The more responses, the better.
Thank you.
We never used to.
Adam, that was on my mind until
Yeah, right.
10 minutes ago, and then I was like, I don't want to grab
You You may have to gavel.
I might have
I
to do it again.
apologize. No, I
No, you have to
said
gavel.
I
Sorry.
have to own my words.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're still gonna, we need to finish up our meeting, so if you could take your conversation outside, please. Grab a survey on the way out the door. Thank you. Unfinished business. New business. Correspondence. Comments from the planner.
So a couple of things in addition to the master plan survey, we did have a tech team meeting earlier this month. There was one industrial property on Executive Drive, a CO2 tank was approved, and also a dumpster enclosure screening area for that site. There was a different request with regard to the expansion dredging of a canal between Conger Bay Drive and Belvedere Boulevard. Lots going on with that project, a lot of unknowns. It was a discussion only, ultimately, that had to come before the planning commission. Lots of things were thrown out there. They have a lot of work to be done before it would be ready to come before you. So I just wanted to share those two.
Thank you.
I also just wanted to say thank you to Sabrina. I know this is your last planning commission meeting before you're
Not yet.
Yeah,
retiring, or maybe you'll stick around to help train and stuff, but officially, right? So if this is your last planning commission meeting.
No, she'll be around.
As a township employee, it's my last
Yeah.
official meeting.
Got it,
But I
okay.
will be back next month.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Edema, and I appreciate you saying that. We were going to attack her at the end. Anything else from the planner? Okay. Comments from the floor?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Comments from us. You are going to be hugely missed. We are excited for you in whatever next adventure you take on. But no, from our hearts, you have kept us sane, you have kept us organized. Anytime we've called and asked, you have been right on it. And I hope that continues in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Definitely well-deserved. Our next meeting is Thursday, January 18th in the year 2024. May you all have a blessed holiday. We'll see you in the new year. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
10:45. Thank you. Ms. Devlin, supported by Mr. Mulder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?